Chapter 1074. Fire Dragon. It's the sound of the fire dragon. His Majesty's first dragon. Is His Majesty coming out? Everyone in the square was looking forward to it. However, to their surprise, after this roar, the fire dragon did not appear. Instead, a loud dragon roar sounded from behind the palace. Roar. It's the sound of an orichalcum dragon. There was no need to remind them. Soon, someone with sharp eyes pointed to the sky above the palace. Dragon! 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 Shockingly, a golden dragon flew over. Ah, shining gold! Is it a gold dragon? Don't you recognize it? It's His Majesty's orichalcum dragon, a magical metal dragon. It's even more noble than the gold dragon. Dragons are all noble. There's no distinction between them. The shining golden orichalcum dragon Marta quickly flew above the square. Like the light emerald dragon Ethan, it circled around and flew directly to Mount Sun, stopping halfway up the mountain. Everyone's amazement had not ended. At this time, another majestic dragon roar sounded. Roar! Immediately after, a silver-white dragon flew over. Those who knew dragons exclaimed. It was the gray-mouthed iron dragon Orn. Orn circled around and flew to Mount Moon, not far from Ethan. He squatted on the mountainside and looked in the direction of the square. Roar! Once again, accompanied by the dragon's roar, a slightly smaller grayish-white dragon flew over. This was the aluminum dragon, Connor. It circled around the square and flew to the mountainside of Mount Sunday, Roar. Following the aluminum dragon, another beautiful young dragon with light blue scales flew into the square with a slightly childish roar. Many people were confused. They could not recognize this dragon. Especially the envoys from various countries, they were even more shocked. There was information on the few dragons that had appeared before, so it was not out of the ordinary. However, this beautiful young dragon was exposed to the public for the first time. So it was obvious. This was another new dragon. How is this possible? Fire dragon, formless dragon, orichalcum dragon, gray iron dragon, light green gem dragon, aluminum dragon, bone dragon. Including this dragon, list already has 8 dragons? Alexander White Iron unconsciously swallowed his saliva, and his palms began to sweat. The current Eagle Kingdom was not considered a vassal state, and there were only 8 dragons in the dragon nest. The newly established Fire Kingdom had already caught up with the Eagle Kingdom in terms of the number of dragons. Most importantly, the Fire Kingdom still had the Holy Dragon. How terrifying! The expression of the envoy from the Blast Furnace Kingdom beside Alexander also changed. Although the Blast Furnace Castle was quite far away from the Fire Kingdom, the rapidly developing Fire Kingdom still made the emissary feel great pressure. Even the Empire would be nervous about the speed of the dragon. Only the envoy from the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom, Mashu Red White Rose, was overjoyed. List is stronger than I thought. When he becomes my brother-in-law, the Red White Rose family will have 2 royal families as their backing, and the power of the royal family should not be any different. Since childhood, she was used to throwing money at everything she wanted. Mashu took it for granted that the Red White Rose family could rely on wealth to stand side by side with the royal family. Your Excellency, what dragon is this? The Marquis of the Pea Island, D. Maria Yuwashi, was also surprised when he saw the new young dragon. He had never seen this dragon before. This is already the 8th dragon of His Majesty. His Majesty's glory is incredible. William Lee smiled and replied reservedly, "It's normal that you have not seen it before. It is an elemental dragon, water dragon. Water dragon Wout. It is still too young and has a bad temper, so it has been left in the sea by List." Water dragon Wout was originally List's hidden trump card. However, after touching the barrier, he began to breed a smoke dragon, which made him understand that he was invincible in the world. No matter how the three empires planned, it would be useless, so there was no need to hide. He might as well show off all the dragons at the founding ceremony to increase his prestige. Just like that. The appearance of Water Dragon quickly caused an uproar among the nobles, but it did not give them much time to calm down. Water Dragon circled over the square and directly landed on the top of the Moon Mountain. Its body was very small, and there was enough space for it to sit on the top of the mountain, so it did not need to squeeze into the middle of the mountain. Soon, another familiar dragon roar was heard. A sharp, high-pitched Wuxia suddenly exploded in the sky above the square. The civilians were so scared that they almost peed their pants. Even the nobles on the viewing platform almost lost their composure. This dragon roar was too sudden, as if it had exploded right next to their ears. When the people came back to their senses, the invisible dragon bard appeared, circled in the sky, flew to the top of the Sun Mountain, and settled on the top of the mountain. Its flowing crystal-like body was dazzling to the eyes. Seeing that the holy dragon had appeared alone, but List had yet to appear, some people could not help but mutter, His Majesty did not appear on the holy dragon. How strange. Yes, the fire dragon and the bone dragon have not appeared. Is His Majesty going to ride the fire dragon? No matter how noble the fire dragon is, it is not as noble as the holy dragon. Moreover, the fire dragon is an evil dragon. In the eyes of many people, dragons were the symbol of nobility. No matter what kind of dragon it was, the holy dragon was obviously more noble than the elemental dragon. The invisible dragon bard could be said to be the only holy dragon that had appeared in the legendary continent. Before Bard appeared, many people, including the dragon-rearing families, did not believe in the existence of the holy dragon. Maybe His Majesty is nostalgic. His first dragon was the fire dragon. Even the Fire Kingdom and his surname were named after the fire dragon. That's true, the Fire Kingdom. If not for nostalgia, His Majesty would not have named the country on the sea like this. The discussion lasted for a long time, because after Bard appeared, no new dragon appeared. Currently, the fire dragon Leo and the bone dragon Winnie had not appeared. They should have already digested the dragon show ceremony that I have carefully arranged. Achi, please follow me to put a perfect end to the dragon show ceremony. In the back mountain of the Palace of Stars, the fire dragon Leo was squatting on the ground. On its back, Achi and List were holding hands. Achi was followed by Charlie the unicorn, and List was wearing the bone dragon armor. Yes. Achi revealed a sweet smile. There was a tinge of shyness in her pure smile, and there was a touch of sweetness in her clear eyes. She had grown up. After List's kiss, the siren girl quickly revealed a fragrance that was about to bloom. Snort. Charlie the unicorn snorted in disdain behind him. It seemed to have a deep prejudice against vulgar humans like List, who violated the purity that it recognized. However, it did not choose to leave Achi. Perhaps the purity that it recognized was just a mentality, a pure state of mind, or perhaps it was already used to its current life. Let's go, List, Achi, don't waste time. A slightly childish reproach sounded. It was the thorn sprite, Ella, dressed in gorgeous frac abier, who flew over at some point. List and Achi looked at each other and smiled. Let's go. Achi rode on Charlie the unicorn, and List rode on Leo's dragon tooth platform and flew high into the sky together. At this moment, the dragon knight List, Flame and the magic shooter Achiroids, Truth, who founded the Fire Kingdom, officially appeared. Wow! Ella shouted, flapped a pair of transparent wings, and hurriedly landed on List's shoulder. Wait for me. Chapter 1075. A huge black and red figure rose from the back of the Palace of Stars, the Palace of Sun, the Moon, and the flames seemed to form a circle around the fire dragon, like a rising sun. Although there was already a golden sun in the sky, Leo's appearance made the palace square, which was full of whispers, fall into silence. All the nobles and civilians looked at the domineering fire dragon above the palace of stars, which was comparable to the red sun. His Majesty is out. Some sharp-eyed people saw List riding on the back of the fire dragon, wearing a white armor that flashed with faint blue light. And magic shooter, His Highness. Some people saw the unicorn beside the fire dragon, as well as the figure almost wrapped in a magic cloak on the back of the unicorn. Although the unicorn was much smaller than the fire dragon, the bright light didn't dim at all. The fire dragon flew closer and closer like a red sun. In the blink of an eye, it had arrived at the palace square and landed on the open space. Its huge body smashed on the rocks on the ground, causing the whole square to tremble. The materials of the palace were strengthened with magic and mixed with rubber water. As long as it wasn't a powerful attack, it wouldn't be damaged. Bang! Wearing the bone dragon armor, List carried the bone dragon sword and jumped off the dragon's back. He nodded at Leo, and the fire dragon flew back into the sky and landed on the mountainside of Moon Mountain. This wasn't the end. The bone dragon armor on List suddenly turned into a ball of faint blue light and fell to the periphery of the square. As the light flashed, a bone dragon stood on the open space. The blue flames in the dragon's eye sockets trembled, giving people a chilling feeling. The next moment, the bone dragon Winnie squatted down, like the giant lion Nimia on the other side of the square. It firmly guarded the safety of the palace square. The 8 dragons were all in place, making the Sun Mountain, Moon Mountain, and the Palace of Stars look like a holy place on Earth, a holy place for dragons. It was dazzling and bright. A chi flipped off Charlie the unicorn. Charlie stepped lightly in the void and walked into the Palace of Sun, Moon, and Stars without looking back. It was not List's mount, and it disdained List's ostentatious display. Sending a chi over was already the most benevolent thing he could do. There was no need to continue supporting List. After the powerful creatures either lined up or left, the people in the square once again looked at the man and woman who were holding hands. Holding hands was a very common etiquette among the nobles. They were walking to the podium. The petite Chi was not conspicuous because of the magic cloak. However, List, who was tall and had a height of 1.93 meters, appeared to be particularly proud and otherworldly. In particular, he wore a jeweled crown on his head. The jeweled crown was usually kept by a chi, and it could be used as a crown for the king at critical moments. 36 large and small gems of different colors decorated the crown so luxuriously that it could steal all the attention at a glance. Beneath the crown was thick golden hair with a bit of natural curls. His extraordinarily handsome face was enough to make most women go crazy with jealousy. When List was young, his face was still childish. However, List, who was now 24 years old, had completely shed his childishness, and his face was full of determination and noble temperament. About half a year ago, he tried to grow a beard. It was not a very thick beard. Both sides of his face were clean, and there was only a circle around his lips and chin. This circle of beard gave him the charm of a mature man and added a lot of the majesty of a king. He was wearing a tuxedo-style gown. It was not black and white, but gold, red, and black. Ordinary people could not match such gorgeous colors at all. However, a good figure and temperament, coupled with the clever design of the tailor, allowed List to control it perfectly. This was not the traditional costume of the nobles, nor was it the exaggerated frac habit of other kings, so in the eyes of the people in the square, it was a little strange. Only the authority and temperament of List quickly made people ignore the awkwardness of the new style of gown. Their eyes eagerly watched their king step by step on the high platform of power. Many people also found that behind List was the swaggering thorn elf Ella. Ella was very famous. Everyone knew that it was List's first elf. In many fabricated biographies of List, Ella appeared more frequently. However, no one cared about Ella. They thought that Ella could follow List, but List was nostalgic. It was not that Ella itself was special. You know, List had 3 dragon elves. Ella was just a big elf. Of course, Ella did not think so. It tried to stick out its chest and followed Liszt with pride, as if it was the protagonist who was about to receive the cheers of the crowd. Wow! I must maintain a noble image, Liszt. You go to the side, don't block my flight path. Liszt did not hear Ella's whisper. Even if he had carefully prepared for such an occasion, he was still excited and unable to calm down. Trying to maintain a calm posture, he sent a chi to her position on the viewing platform, then turned around and gave Ella to a chi. Don't make trouble, Ella. After giving Ella a scolding in his heart, he walked to his own high platform of power. Facing the viewing platform and the entire palace square, he took a deep breath. He pulled up the king's scepter from the high platform and held it in his hand. This was a scepter made of magic metal alloy. There was no special ability. It was just a valuable decoration. But it symbolized the power of the king and would be passed down from generation to generation. Taking a deep breath, Liszt raised the king's scepter high. Then he announced in an unquestionable tone, "My people, I am your king, Liszt Flame." Boom! As soon as Liszt began his self-introduction, the entire square suddenly exploded. Everyone began to cheer wildly, whether nobles or civilians. The huge explosion of cheers quickly drowned out everything, like a sudden tsunami, battering Liszt, who was standing tall. He stretched out his right hand and pressed it down, motioning the crowd to stop. However, waves of cheers came one after another, and there was no sign of stopping. The shocking scene of the 8 dragons had long been pushed to the climax by this ceremony. The people who had been excited for a long time needed a point to vent. Liszt's speech was such a point. If it was another king, he might wait for the people to vent their enthusiasm before giving a lengthy speech. But Liszt was not an ordinary king. He was the powerful dragon knight who founded the Flame Kingdom. He was a knight who had touched the existence of the barrier. He did not have the habit of waiting. When he wanted the people to calm down, then this will would not easily be shaken. Roar! 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 A dragon's roar suddenly sounded from the Sun Mountain and the Moon Mountain. This sound pierced through the sky and shook the clouds. It quickly swept through the palace square, and in an instant, it easily covered the cheers of the people in the square. When the dragon's roar dissipated, no one in the square dared to cheer anymore. Only Liszt's clear voice could be heard slowly. It clearly spread to everyone's ears, as the only master of the sea, the lord of all the islands, the invisible dragon knight, the fire dragon knight, the water dragon knight, the bronze dragon knight, the gray iron dragon knight, the bone dragon knight, and the aluminum dragon knight, I announced to everyone in the legendary continent. Chapter 1076. I hereby announce to everyone in the legendary continent that the Fire Kingdom will rise from the Eastern Sea and inherit the glory of the ancient civilizations, the Moon Empire and the Sun Empire. Today, on the first day of the first month of the first year of the Fire calendar, we will officially become the new kingdom of the legendary continent. We will believe in the glory of the night, protect the character of justice, carry on the past and protect the people of the kingdom. Liszt used a dignified tone to clearly announce the oath that he had written earlier, and it was transmitted to the ears of every single person in the palace square. After saying that, he communicated with his own dragon telepathically and let out all kinds of dragon roars. Roar, 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 yo roar, woo-ee-ya, and so on. The silent crowd also cheered. The fireworks team of mages who had long been ready around the square released all kinds of magic spells using magic equipment. The sky suddenly became colorful, and all kinds of beautiful magic spells bloomed, pleasing to the eye. The corner of Liszt's mouth curled up slightly as he held the king's scepter in his hand and walked towards his throne on the platform. The throne was also specially made of magical metal alloy. It was nothing special but luxurious. While the crowd was still cheering, the palace servants and night squires quickly walked into the square. They packed up all kinds of props that were no longer needed and rearranged the palace square to welcome the next step of the founding ceremony. Liszt also took the opportunity to take a sip of water. He also took out the script book that he carried with him and glanced at it. When the cheers gradually died down, the whispers quickly grew louder. After the excitement, the nobles and civilians were all passionately discussing the dragon exhibition ceremony and the king's speech. The kingdom has finally been established. From now on, we can truly call ourselves the Flame People. Yes. There are no more Eagle Men, Moon Killer Men, or Sapphire Men. We are all Fire Men, the subjects of the great King Liszt. His Majesty's speech is too outstanding. Our Fire Kingdom has actually inherited the great civilizations of the Moon Empire and the Sun Empire. I know about the Moon Empire, but what is the Sun Empire? It doesn't matter what it is. Moon, Sunday. I can tell that the Sun Empire is as great as the Moon Empire. The light on His Majesty's body is so bright that I can't open my eyes. A kingdom. I've actually witnessed the birth of a great kingdom in my lifetime. I've even been fortunate enough to participate in it and become a founding noble of the kingdom. A count on the viewing platform sighed emotionally. Last year, he had been a captive, but this year, he had become a founding count. His Majesty Liszt has become a legend in the legendary continent, said a messenger from the duchy. A noblewoman with starry eyes clutched her chest and almost fainted from excitement. Although I don't agree with His Majesty's taste in clothes, his noble temperament is intoxicating. I really hope I can have the chance to dance with His Majesty. I also want to ride a dragon. A commoner boy clenched his fist. His name was Jim, and he had migrated to Blazing Island with his mother during the Development War last year. He was already studying at the Night Academy. Life on Flame Island is too blissful. Thank you, His Majesty, he will always protect us. His Majesty is the greatest knight. Countless praises came from people of various statuses. However, not everyone was influenced by the king's speech. At least, the Eagle Kingdom's emissary, Alexander White Iron, had been deeply worried since the beginning of the dragon exhibition ceremony. Eight-headed dragon. Although the founding ceremony is fancy, there is no doubt about Liszt's strength. Adonis asked me to examine the Fire Kingdom. How should I report to him? Liszt had already displayed an unimaginable foundation at the founding ceremony. Any country with an eight-headed dragon would be able to do whatever they wanted. Alexander knew King Adonis's plan. It was to show weakness to the enemy and then deal a fatal blow. However, it was easy to show weakness, but where would the fatal blow come from? Kill Liszt? A dragon knight who could subdue an eight-headed dragon and a dragon knight who could escape the Empire's assassination. How unfathomable was the strength of such a dragon knight? With such a dragon knight and an eight-headed dragon guarding, it was unrealistic to expect the Blazing Kingdom to collapse easily. The first to bear the brunt of the Blazing Kingdom is my Eagle Kingdom. The Iron and Steel Ridge and the Blast Furnace Castle can still survive, but where can my Eagle Kingdom hide? There were cheers all around, but Alexander was silent. However, he was not alone. Beside him, the Blast Furnace Castle Kingdom's envoy was also silent. Unlike Alexander's worries, although this envoy was also wary, he was thinking more about how to maintain the structure of the four kingdoms in the northeast of the legendary continent. The triangle was the most stable structure. The people in this world did not study geometry, so they probably did not know this truth. However, people with a little political acumen would guess that it was easy for three kingdoms to coexist. Whichever kingdom was stronger, the other two kingdoms could unite and avoid being swallowed. However, there would be many variables in four kingdoms. The Blast Furnace Castle Kingdom was powerful, but they had to consider more. Liszt did not care about what the dragon exhibition ceremony and the king's speech had made the envoys think. He quickly signaled for the founding ceremony to enter the next process, the enfeoffment of nobles. The lords were the first to be enfeoffed. As there were too many people, naturally, there was no need for Liszt to complete the enfeoffment ceremony personally. He only needed to follow the lines written in the script book and say a few words. "My followers, the war is over, but tomorrow still needs to be protected." Looking at the night lined up, Liszt was in high spirits. "I will repay courage with glory, loyalty with love, and betrayal with revenge. Witness the glory of the night." Clatter. A group of knights knelt on both knees, straightened their bodies, and looked at Liszt. More than a dozen clerks from the palace held all the prepared materials and handed them to each lord according to the list, including badges, clothing, civilized sticks, and proof of fief. When all the nobles wore the badges on their chests, Liszt solemnly glanced around and said, "In view of your performance on the battlefield, charging bravely and fearlessly, obtaining glorious glory, and bringing a lot of military achievements for the Fire Kingdom. Now, as the King of the Fire Kingdom, I confer you the title of Lord of the Kingdom. You will be in charge of fief, provide for night, and drive for me." The knights stood up one after another and solemnly performed the knight's oath of allegiance. They loudly echoed, "I will be in charge of fief, provide for night, and drive for my lord." Just like that. The enfeoffment ceremony was completed. The lords left one by one and returned to their original positions on the viewing platform. After the lords, it was the turn of the baron. The same lines, the same process. Soon, these more than 1,000 baron also returned to their original positions. After that, it was the 366 viscounts. Slightly different from the enfeoffment ceremony for baron and lord, the enfeoffment ceremony for viscounts was the addition of the king's roll call. The clerks were responsible for distributing the enfeoffment materials. Liszt read the enfeoffment of the viscounts in a clear voice. "Blair Steele, as the King of the Fire Kingdom, I confer you the title of Viscount of the Three Leaves County." Blair, who had followed Liszt since the Flower Town, excitedly performed the knight's oath of allegiance and responded, choking with sobs, "I will be in charge of the Three Leaves County, provide for night, and drive for my lord." Liszt nodded slightly. Liszt then went before the next Viscount and read in a clear voice, "Isaiah Moss, as the King of the Fire Kingdom, I confer you the title of Viscount of the Drizzle County." Every time the enfeoffment was read, a Viscount loudly responded with an oath of allegiance. This lengthy yet solemn scene made the blood of the commoners and lesser aristocrats watching the nation-building ceremony boil. In particular, the children who were still young couldn't wait to immediately run home to cultivate qi and become a glorious knight. They would make contributions on the battlefield and receive the king's enfeoffment. Just like the dazzling viscounts and aristocrats on the scene, they would receive the attention of the audience. The Nine Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1077. After pondering for a long time, he did not know what to write next. To be honest, the excitement of writing "The Big Dragon is Dead" had long passed. Now, Lao Bai was purely trying to come up with a complete ending for the book and was holding on. It was estimated that there were 300,000 words left, or even less, for the book to come to an end. But don't worry, Lao Bai would not leave a bad ending. He would make a beautiful arrangement for Liszt and bring this somewhat anticlimactic farming story to a successful conclusion. Finally. There are no updates today. My state is really terrible. I'm very sorry. The Big Dragon is Dead applies for leave. Currently typing, please wait a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 1078. Even if it was just the reading of everyone's name and a sentence, the ceremony of conferring Viscount still lasted for a full 2 hours. In addition to the previous night parade, the dragon exhibition ceremony, and the king's speech, it was already 10 o'clock in the morning. The process of the founding ceremony in the palace square had been completed, and it began to move to the palace of the sun, moon, and stars to begin the conferring of counts and marquises. It was not much different from the process of conferring viscounts, baron, and lord. It was just that each count and marquis was more long-winded. In this way, 21 marquises and 64 counts rushed to successfully complete the conferring ceremony before noon. The Fire Kingdom is newly established. The founding nobles are not only lords, baron, viscounts, counts, and marquises, but also 3 dukes. Lee William Tulip, Duke of Tulip Island, Piero Grayiron, Duke of Sycamore Island, and Bruce Bossy, Duke of the Saltwater Sea, who was unable to participate in the ceremony. Liszt presided over the conferring ceremony for the whole morning. His mouth was dry and his mind was in a mess. His earlier excitement and agitation had been worn away. But he still forced himself to finish the last part of the ceremony. We will hold a separate conferring ceremony for the 3 dukes, and now it's time for the luncheon. Everyone, please join me and enjoy it. The luncheon was held in the palace hall. All the nobles participated in the banquet together. Only the high-ranking nobles and envoys from various countries gathered together, the middle-ranking nobles gathered together, and the low-ranking nobles gathered together. There was no such thing as equality for everyone. The hierarchy under the knight system was so strict, but no one would complain. On the contrary, the low-ranking nobles would only be extremely envious and eager to squeeze into the circle of the high-ranking nobles. The knight class had always been synonymous with forging ahead. At least in the new Fire Kingdom, the knight had not yet decayed and kept forging ahead. The grand founding ceremony came to a perfect end with the end of the luncheon. However, the impact of the ceremony quickly spread from within. The nobles of the fief had already left Flame Island with the serfs and followers that had been assigned long ago, and returned to their own fief. In particular, a group of high-ranking nobles took away a large number of serfs, reducing the population of Flame Island from 5 million to 3 million. Among them, 2 million were direct subjects of Liszt, and the remaining 1 million were subjects of the feudal nobles. The feudal nobles did not have the right to enfeoffment, but they could provide for the knight. The nobles of the city, the Knight of the Burning Legion, had taken over the management of many cities. However, there were still many more cities that were still under Liszt's name. After losing a large number of people, these cities needed a large number of people to replenish their various industries. In the era of automation and industrialization, population was the most important labor force. Liszt had just been excited for a day, but he was already tied down by a large number of kingdom affairs. Even though he had established the outer cabinet and the inner cabinet, there were still many decisions that he had to make. Your Majesty, Father, just call me Liszt. There's no need to consider the title of king between us. After all, Liszt's soul was that of an earthling, and he could not adapt to the relationship of a father becoming a follower of his son, even though he knew that such a situation also happened in ancient China. He vaguely remembered that the Qing dynasty was still the Ming dynasty. There was an emperor who did not have a son, so he adopted a child from the royal family as his heir. After this child inherited the throne, because he could not deal with his biological father, he started a mighty battle with the ministers. Fortunately, the Fire Kingdom was created by Liszt, and he could set the rules however he wanted. Lee William showed a gratified smile, although he did not mind bowing down to his son. Under the knight system, this was not a problem. However, Liszt's attitude made him quite satisfied and proud. Liszt, now that the feudal nobles have moved out, Fire Island will soon fall into a problem of population shortage. What is the outer cabinet's solution? The outer cabinet has discussed it several times, but no decision has been made. But in conclusion, there are 2 solutions. The first one is to stop the new city plan and stabilize the developed cities. When the population has increased, then we can consider the new city construction. The second one is to immediately launch a war to plunder the population. Liszt thought for a moment and did not respond directly. Instead, he asked, how far is the joint plan with the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom going? Lee William shook his head and replied somewhat helplessly, although the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family has decided to cooperate with our country and divide up the Eagle Kingdom, the specific details and the distribution of interests cannot be finalized in a short period of time. Contact King Osborne directly and let him urge the nobles under him. The war should be started as soon as possible. We cannot give the Eagle Kingdom a chance to react. Osborne has a false appearance. On the surface, he appears to be a bold and ambitious king, but in fact, he is also an overcautious and conservative person. According to the information sent by the blood servant from the City of Steel, Osborne held several meetings to discuss it. The ministers quarreled, but there was still no concrete result. What a waste. Rotten wood cannot be carved. List could not help but curse. I am in charge of the dragon-slaying battle, he is in charge of the night charge, and the Eagle Kingdom is divided in half. No matter how simple the arithmetic problem is, it still takes so long to consider. The whole plan has been going on for more than a year, hasn't it? It has been a year and a half. I personally went to the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom to finalize the plan, Lee Williams said. What a procrastinator. If it were not for the fact that I did not have enough night to annex the entire Eagle Kingdom, I would have taken my dragon and directly attacked them. This sentence was not a boast. At the level of the Dragon Knight, he was already invincible. It was just that the strength of his subordinates was too weak. It was too risky for the Fire Kingdom to annex the Eagle Kingdom alone. It was possible that they would not only face the Eagle Kingdom, but also the Iron and Steel Ridge, the Blast Furnace Castle, and even several other neighboring kingdoms. It was hard to say whether the Eagle Kingdom would ask for help. After all, the Eagle royal family had once revealed the news of the Holy Dragon to the noble Frost Empire. Anything could happen if they were pushed too hard. Only by involving the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom and giving out some benefits to appease the neighboring kingdoms, could they successfully annex the Eagle Kingdom. Lee Williams suddenly said, List, there is one point worth discussing. The appearance of the eight-headed dragon at the founding ceremony. I am worried that as your deterrence further increases, the Iron and Steel Ridge royal family may very likely give up the cooperation. Father, do you mean that Osborne might be frightened by the speed of my dragon? That's right. You rode the Holy Dragon, the Fire Dragon, the Magical Metal Dragon, and now you're riding the Water Dragon. It's only been a few years. Every time you ride a dragon, the three kingdoms will be more wary of you. What I'm more worried about is that the three kingdoms may have secretly begun to ally with each other. Is there any sign? Not yet, but I dare not rule out this possibility. List frowned. This possibility was indeed not impossible. If he was the king of the three kingdoms, he would also be extremely afraid of himself. The royal families of the three kingdoms had accumulated for hundreds and thousands of years to gather a few dozen dragons, but he himself had only spent a few years. Thinking of this, he slightly reflected and sighed, it seems that I have indeed been too high profile. The next time I ride a dragon, I should raise it on an uninhabited island. It is not advisable to expose it too much. The Duke of Tulip Island, who was beside him, pretended not to care and picked up his teacup and took a sip of tea. Chapter 1079. In any case, the success or failure of the plan to unite the Steel Ridge Kingdom was still uncertain. The lack of population had always been a huge problem for the Fire Kingdom, and List, who was bent on doing things quickly, was not willing to slow down the development plan. Therefore, the best way was to launch a war for the expansion order. However, the content of the expansion order has to be innovated. Plundering the hinterland of the Eagle Kingdom once a year is too frequent. List said. He naturally understood that you couldn't just grab a place and pull it. You had to move to another place to continue pulling it. If we can't plunder the Eagle Kingdom, we can only plunder the Snow Wind Duchy. Lee Williams said. Then inform Marquis Yevich Waterpeanut of Realgar City and Marquis Ahmad of Thorns left territory to speed up the attack on the Snow Wind Duchy. Before June, I need to send back at least 500,000 serfs from the Snow Wind Duchy. The more night the better. The Snow Wind Duchy was not a large duchy. It was located on a plateau and was very barren. Its population was only 6 or 7 million. When the civil war between the first prince and the second prince had just started, Yevich had already cooperated with his father-in-law Amat to secretly transfer more than 500,000 people to the Fire Kingdom. Now they had to transfer more than 500,000 people. In just a year, the population would be reduced by 1/5. In addition, the Yellowstone Plain Kingdom was also secretly pulling the wool. Perhaps by the time the two princes decided the winner, the Snow Wind Duchy would only have half of its population left. Of course, this had nothing to do with List. He was only concerned about the development of the Fire Kingdom. Then I'll go arrange it. By the way, father, I plan to hold your dukedom enfeoffment ceremony on January 15th. I'll have the palace prepare for the ceremony. Father, you can just wait for the 15th, I'm not picky. Any time is fine. Lee William's calm face revealed an unconcealable smile. Once upon a time, he was just a count of the Sapphire Duchy, struggling to become a marquis. He thought that before his chi was exhausted, being promoted to a marquis would be a blessing of the knight's glory. However, with the rise of his second son, List, his dream became within reach. Unknowingly, he had already obtained the title of marquis and obtained the domain knight's secret book. Becoming an existence below the Dragon Knight. Strength and ambition always complemented each other. However, it hadn't been long since his ambition had been aroused. Just as he had begun to look forward to the position of Duke, the position of Duke had already arrived. Everything seemed like a dream. When he left the Palace of Stars, he felt as if he was floating. Of course, a domain knight could fly in the air for a long time. His mount, the storm dragon horse with a broken horn, was pacing back and forth in the palace square. The broken horn on the head of this super dragon was much more magnificent. Not only was the main body made of magical metal alloy, but it was also embedded with fine gems and engraved with magical runes. It was custom-made by the Magic Association. It was equivalent to a powerful piece of magical equipment. William mounted the horse and shouted, "White Dragon Horse, let's go." The broken horn storm dragon horse immediately flapped its wings and soared into the sky like a bolt of lightning, charging towards the Flame Royal City. A moment later, he stopped in front of the tall, stately building of King City's administrative office. The entire administrative office was a 6-story building from the Victorian era. It faced the triumphal arch and was painted gold. It was very eye-catching. The building was very long and divided into 3 sections. The first section was the bureaucracy of the King City, the second section was the bureaucracy of the cabinet, and the last section was the bureaucracy of the outer court. William's office was on the 6th floor. It was spacious and luxuriously decorated. He allowed his valet to take off his coat and went directly to his stone desk. He signaled to his assistant, "Summon the ministers of the outer court and hold a magic forum meeting. The time is set for 2:30 p.m. "Yes, sir." The female assistant, whose appearance could be rated 80 out of 100, twisted her slender waist and walked into the small meeting room that came with the office. She was tapping on a slightly larger and more complicated magic forum. Her fingers were slender and magic flowed at her fingertips. She was obviously a magician. Of course, the term magician in the Flame Kingdom was about to be abolished. She was now a registered arcanist. She specialized in communications and was specially trained to operate the magic forum. The magic forum lit up. Like a projector, it projected more than 10 screens on the walls of the meeting room. Very quickly, some of the screens turned from gray and white to color. Then, some people dressed like the female assistant appeared on the screen. Just like on Earth, from text communication to video communication, the magic forum also entered the video era after continuous development and improvement. The Flame Kingdom had already conquered the teleportation magic circle. Developing video communication didn't pose any technical difficulties. Chi used her free time to come up with a video communication plan and handed it over to the Magic Guild to design. However, the cost of the video magic forum was extremely high. Currently, the production was only enough for the cabinet and outer court members to use and train professional communication arcanists to operate it. Others couldn't touch it yet. Assistant Portia, is the Prime Minister calling for the Magic Forum meeting? A woman on the screen asked. Yes, Assistant Olivia. Please inform the First Minister of Internal Affairs to attend the Magic Forum meeting, the female assistant replied. I'll inform Sir Geoffrey now. However, he's currently patrolling the territory. He might need some time. The meeting will be held at 2:30 p.m. Please inform the First Minister of Internal Affairs. Yes. In this way, the female assistant notified the people on the screen one by one and determined the time of the Magic Forum meeting. When she finished the notification and was about to close the Magic Forum, Lee William came in with a glass of red wine. Portia, contact Tulip Castle for me. Yes, sir. Portia's assistant operated on the Magic Forum and soon projected another screen. However, when the Magic Forum was connected, the screen was still gray. Tulip Castle didn't have a video Magic Forum. In addition, Tulip Castle was a newly built Duke's Castle on Tulip Island. The Coral Island had been returned to the Sapphire Duchy. The former Tulip Castle had become a thing of the past. Only Black Horse Island was still in the form of an enclave, belonging to Liszt. There were natural nodes on Black Horse Island. In the future, the magic teleportation circle would be open to increase control over the Sapphire Duchy. This is Tulip Castle. A male voice came from the Magic Forum. Although video communication couldn't be done, the ordinary Magic Forum had already been upgraded to voice communication. Levis? Lee William asked. Yes, Sir Father. How is Loria's body? Very good. The medical arcanists are constantly observing. The twins in her belly are developing healthily. Levis's voice revealed excitement. This was Loria's second child. Yes. Lee William was also very happy. Although his 4-year-old grandson Richard had shown excellent talent, he still had expectations for the unborn twins. After all, with the example of Liszt, who could guarantee that the second son wouldn't be a legend? In fact, since the rise of Liszt, his legendary story had changed the embarrassing situation of many aristocratic second sons. It turned out that most aristocrats were indifferent to their second sons and let them do as they pleased. After all, the eldest son was the inheritance system. As long as the eldest son was cultivated, the family could continue. But now, while many aristocrats cultivated their eldest son, they were also willing to share resources to cultivate their second son. They didn't want to give birth to the next Liszt. As long as the second son could make a little success, the cultivation would not be in vain. And Liszt had also become an irreplaceable idol in the minds of many aristocratic second sons. Every day, a large number of aristocratic second sons from the 3 kingdoms and many duchies came to seek shelter from thousands of miles away. Many of the aristocrats in the city were such aristocratic second sons. Without family resources to use, they were completely dependent on Liszt's support and became a vassal of the Flame family. After a pause, Lee William said indifferently, Levis, my nobility ceremony is on the 15th. You calculate the time yourself, bring grandmother and the others, and rush to the Sun, Moon, and Stars Palace. Nobility ceremony on the 15th? Please rest assured, Sir Father. I will arrange for my family and immediately rush to the Sun, Moon, and Stars Palace. Levis laughed. Chapter 1080. My dear, the date of Lord Father's conferment has been set. It will be on the 15th of this month. Our Tulip family is about to become a Duke family. After ending the magic communication, Levis immediately went to his wife's room. He said excitedly to the pregnant Rolia Golden Wheat, this is really delightful news. From Sapphire to Flame Island, the Tulip family is finally going to enter a glorious moment. Rolia gently rubbed her belly. Although she was also smiling, she wasn't as excited as Levis, isn't this already clear? Ever since Liszt promised to bestow Tulip Island to Lord Father, the title of Duke was already clear. Even if that's the case, I won't feel at ease if I don't wait for it. There's nothing to feel at ease about, Levis. You don't have to care too much about the details of the title, land, wealth, and so on. In the Fire Kingdom, you just need to follow Liszt closely. You are his elder brother. The deep bond between you two brothers is far more secure than any noble title. Don't worry, Lord Father is here. Levis didn't care at all. Rolia frowned slightly, but quickly relaxed. The Tulip family will be handed over to you one day. You can't alienate Liszt. Levis was speechless. You always worry about these useless things. Rolia said seriously, Richard is already 4 years old. Levis, I have a decision. What is it? When the twins are born, I plan to ask Lord Father to send Richard to the Palace of Stars, and Sunday firstly, he can accompany Lord Father. Lord Father is the Prime Minister of the Outer Pavilion. He will be staying in the Fire Kingdom more than in Tulip Castle. Secondly, he can receive training as a Knight of the Burning Legion as soon as possible. Is there a need for this, Rolia? Richard is only 4 years old. When I was 4, I was still peeing and playing with mud in the castle's garden. Yes. Rolia insisted. She announced this decision at the castle's banquet that night. After all, Madame Marie was not Levis's biological mother and did not express her opinion. Madame Penelope agreed, Rolia's decision is correct. Although I am reluctant to let little Richard leave Tulip Castle, he can always shine on Liszt's glory in the Palace of the Sun, Moon, and Stars. Little Richard is very lucky to have a dragon knight as an uncle. Grandmother, it's just the basic training of a knight. Do you think that I, his father, can't teach him? No matter what, I'm a Sky Knight. How can a Sky Knight be compared to a Dragon Knight? Levis, you're already 30 years old, but you're still an ordinary Sky Knight. Don't you have any idea? Madame Penelope glanced at Levis. She used to be most satisfied with this eldest grandson, but now, she only had eyes for Liszt. Cough cough. Levis coughed awkwardly. He really wanted to say that a 30-year-old Sky Knight was not a bad performance. However, his grandmother made an example of a legendary dragon knight like Liszt, who was as dazzling as the sun. This made him speechless. All the young geniuses in the northeast corner of the legendary continent lived in Liszt's shadow. Basically, Liszt was an existence that subverted everyone's perception. Seeing this, Rolia smiled and said, let's ask Father's opinion when we reach the Fire King's city. 4-year-old Richard already has the ability to live without his parents. Although she said she wanted to ask William's opinion, everyone knew that Rolia had already made up her mind. Levis shrugged his shoulders. In fact, he understood Rolia's thoughts and knew that this would help Richard. He just felt that Richard was too young at the age of 4. However, when he turned his head and glanced at his son, who was sitting upright like an adult, he inexplicably felt that this might not be a bad thing. Rolia's discipline towards Richard was too strict. She basically did not allow him to play like a normal child. She had instilled aristocratic etiquette and the way to govern from the age of 2. This kind of childhood was scary just thinking about it. Thus, he spoke with the tone of the heir of the Tulip family and said in an unquestionable tone, I will bring Richard to inspect the construction of the manors in the next 2 days. You guys stay in the castle and pack your luggage. We will set off for the Fire King's city in 3 days. It had not been long since the founding of the kingdom, and everything was busy. In the midst of the busy time, Liszt unexpectedly received a new letter from the magic platform. It was sent by the 6 mermaids that were traveling around the sea. Your Majesty, we have already started our return journey from the westernmost part of the legendary continent. The data of the coastline calculated by the sextant has already been packaged and sent back to the Guild of Magic. Apologies to you, there has been a delay in the year-long journey around the sea. However, although we did not find any mermaids, we have captured many sea elves, including 2 great elves. The magic platform's message was very long. It had already been recorded on a piece of paper by the communication arcanist. Liszt continued reading. We have discovered a few ruins of the Sea Kingdom. Unfortunately, it has been a long time, and the Naga and clown fish have long disappeared. In the westernmost part of the legendary continent, we have also encountered a legendary sea monster, the Hydra. Unfortunately, it was too strong, and we were unable to capture it. The mermaids reported what they had seen and heard in the past year of traveling around the sea in the form of essays. There was not much useful information. It was just the discovery of the Hydra, and the location of the coastline by the sextant, as well as the fact that the elves were worthy of attention. Reply to the mermaids. End the voyage as soon as possible and send the elves back. After reading the message, Liszt ordered, by the way, send over the results of the kingdom's enfeoffment of Duke Birabosi and the other 6 marquises. He could not criticize the mermaids to hurry back to work, but he still had to warn them about their attitude. Yes, Your Majesty. The arcanist in charge of the communication immediately bowed and left. After settling the urgent affairs at hand, Liszt quickly arrived at the Mage Tower. He had come to inquire about the progress of the coastline survey of the legendary continent. Chris, you have received the location of the sextant sent by the mermaids. Has the map been drawn? Your Majesty, the rough sketch has been drawn. Chris gestured to the arcanist in charge of the mapping, who spread a map on the table. The map was huge, but it only had an incomplete outline and a small part of it had detailed records. So this is the legendary continent. Liszt looked at the map. The coastline that had been drawn on the map outlined the legendary continent as an irregular shape. There was a large part of the northern part of the continent that did not have a coastline, because that was a place that the mermaids had not traveled to. However, the outline of the legendary continent had been drawn, and the geographical location and area of the 3 kingdoms in the northeast corner of the continent could be clearly compared. The area of the 3 kingdoms added together is only equivalent to 1/20th of the total area of the legendary continent. It is indeed an inconspicuous corner. The Flame Islands are here, the Sapphire Islands are here. And from the looks of it, the Eagle Kingdom is completely surrounded by the Steel Ridge, the Furnace Castle, and the Yellowstone Plain. As long as these 3 kingdoms are cleared, it will be easy to nibble away at it. Looking at the large blank area of the map, Liszt was already imagining how to conquer it. Sooner or later, his strength would not allow him to keep a low profile. Conquering the legendary continent gradually moved from the level of fantasy to the level of practical planning. Chapter 1081. The conferring ceremony of the Duke of Tulip Island, Lee William Tulip, was not too grand, especially with the extravagant scene of the founding of the nation. But to the Tulip family, this was the most glorious moment. In the name of Lee William, a 3-day banquet was held in the Fire Kingdom, inviting a large number of nobles who stayed in the Fire Kingdom. After that, Levis and the rest returned to Tulip Island. Lee William continued to be the Minister of Foreign Affairs, stationed in the Fire Kingdom. Levis's son, Richard, who was also Liszt's nephew, stayed in the Palace of Sun, Moon and Stars. Liszt liked this nephew very much, so he would not refuse to nurture him. But he was busy and could not discipline him himself. There would be servants to take care of him, and there would be teachers from the Royal Knight Academy to teach him. Chris, has the reform agenda of the Guild of Magic been decided? Liszt came to the Mage Tower in Fireforge City again and asked the First Minister of Arcana, Chris Truth. Your Majesty, after a few years of discussion, the registered mages of the Guild of Magic have completely adapted to the Arcanist system, so there is not much resistance to the reform. The plan to restructure the Guild of Magic into the Royal Arcana Academy has been approved by the Arcanist Assessment Committee. The Guild of Magic had been a product of excess from the beginning. Now that the Fire Kingdom had been established, it was time to change it according to Liszt's will. Referring to the American university system on Earth, Liszt's ideal scientific system was the integration of production, learning, and research. The Royal Knight Academy had been established to nurture elite knight, and it was similar to the National Defense University and West Point Military Academy. Now, the Royal Arcana Academy was to be established to nurture all kinds of arcanists and undertake magical research tasks. This way, an education system for both knight and arcanists could be formed. At the same time, education resources from all over the country would be integrated, and ordinary schools would be set up. Knight and arcanist courses would be set up to provide a continuous supply of talents for the kingdom. This was undoubtedly a little ahead of the time, and it was hard to say what impact it would have. However, Liszt did not care. His strength had broken through the horizon, and he already had the capital to do as he pleased. There was no other reason for him to do as he pleased. A dragon was just that willful. Now that you've passed the assessment, let's finish the reorganization as soon as possible. Well, since a Qi and Laird don't want to manage the mundane affairs, you're the first Arcana Minister and the first Dean of the Royal Arcana Academy. Chris smiled and nodded. As you wish, Your Majesty. After a pause, Chris asked again, then, Your Majesty, will the finances of the Royal Arcane Academy be provided by the kingdom, or by your internal court? Bearing the burden of the kingdom meant that the local lords would have to pay taxes to bear the burden. The internal court had provided it, meaning that it was the Flame family's personal burden. Both sets of finances were Liszt's money. It was just that the money was used for different purposes. One was the treasury, the money collected from taxes and used for the construction of the kingdom. The other was a private stash of money. The money earned from their fiefs could be spent as they pleased. The kingdom will bear the responsibility. Liszt said expressionlessly. I'll gradually integrate the arcanists into the noble system. In the future, the Royal Arcane Academy will no longer be supported by me. The talents of the Arcane Academy will be shared by all the fiefs and nobles. Of course, the research results can also be shared. Scientific research was a bottomless pit, and so was magical research. He didn't want to pay for it alone. He could use the name of the Royal Arcane Academy to collect some taxes from the feudal nobles. Then, he could throw in some careless research results to stop the nobles from complaining. I understand. So, will the Royal Arcane Academy be located in the Magic District of the Fire Kingdom? Yes. The Magic Guild was being reorganized into the Royal Arcane Academy. Mages who were obsessed with magical research had to take time out to go through all kinds of procedures to become teachers of the Royal Arcane Academy or to attach their own laboratories to the Arcane Academy. Applications for funds, staffing, and all kinds of messy things came one after another. Mages didn't have a good time, and so did the knight. As the fiefs and nobles took away a large number of knight and officials, the cities and towns had to send new knight to take over. In such a situation of national change, all kinds of unexpected situations were constantly happening. However, it did not affect the spring plowing work in the first year of the fire calendar. The serfs were short of hands and a large number of wasteland could not be cultivated. But at least there would be a large number of serfs rushing to plant the farmland cultivated by the elves. Liszt's own farmland could also be allocated enough fertilizer to be spread. There is another important reason why the spring plowing work is not affected, is that there is a serious shortage of elves. In particular, the fiefs and nobles took away their elves, and a large number of plantations were abandoned. It can't be said to be abandoned, but the harvest depends on the glory of the night. Said Lee William, Duke of Tulip Island, when reporting this year's spring plowing work. Liszt nodded. The speed of elves breeding can't keep up, so the development order has to continue to be issued. We can't let go of the Eagle Kingdom. By the way, Father, has the envoy of the Steel Ridge Kingdom confirmed that King Osborne has clearly refused to join hands with me and divide the Eagle Kingdom? Yes, the Sapphire Duchy's change of allegiance to the Fire Kingdom has caused a greater impact than expected. King Osborne attaches great importance to the face of the aristocracy. Perhaps he is just taking advantage of the situation. Seeing that I am powerful, he is unwilling to join me in plotting the Eagle Kingdom, fearing that I will continue to grow stronger. List shook his head. Forget it, if he refuses, then so be it. Recently, I have a vague feeling that there is a new dragon waiting for me to ride in this sea. Another one? Lee William stared. It's just a feeling, it's hard to say whether it's true or not. However, my strength has been steadily improving, so it's not surprising that there are one or two more dragons. He was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Since the disappearance of the smoke mission and the birth of the smoke dragon, he could take the initiative to stir the threads of fate. A while ago, the phoenix perching parasol tree dragon Elf Annie had told him that the two phoenix perching parasol trees that had been the focus of attention had successfully bred two sprite worms. This was a powerful proof. It proved that he could take the initiative to attack and clearly arrange things around him. Recently, he felt that there was a new dragon in the Sea of the Flame archipelago. As long as he could stir the threads of fate with his will again, he would be able to grasp the new dragon in his hands. I am a child of glory, the glory of a knight is constantly guiding me. Father, I will leave the kingdom to you and the outer court. I will be away for a while to look for my new dragon. What else could Lee William say? Dragons were the greatest in the world, you can rest assured and look for the dragon. I will look after the kingdom for you. Thereupon, List quietly left the palace of sun, moon, and stars. He was not in a hurry to look for a new dragon. Instead, he went to the dragon pit mine and met the grey-mouthed iron dragon Aun, who had made the dragon pit mine his dragon nest. Aun, during this period of time, let's practice hard together and form a spirit imprint as soon as possible. Roar! Aun responded. After the light emerald dragon Ethan and the fire dragon Leo, the invisible bard had recently reached perfection. His mind now had a clear and inextinguishable figure of List. As for the other dragons, the bone dragon Winnie could not form a spirit imprint. The little water dragon Walter and the aluminum dragon Connor still had no shadows. The mountain copper dragon Marta only had a shadow. Only in Aoun's mind, List's shadow was already indistinct. It was not far from perfection. After touching Aoun's scales, he could not help but ponder, how to stir the threads of fate is very particular. For example, stirring a sprite worm is a piece of cake. But to involve a dragon, I must follow the trajectory of the threads and borrow its strength. This was the formation mechanism of the smoke mission. In the smoke mission, the reward could only be obtained after completing the mission. This process was the most effortless way to stir the threads of fate. Now that List had transformed into a smoke dragon, he was merely turning the passive smoke mission into an active attack. Using his own will as the guide, he would proactively stir the threads of fate and obtain the content he wanted. When Aoun and I reach perfection, we will probably be able to take advantage of the situation to involve this new dragon. However, I can feel that there are many threads of fate in the surroundings, waiting for me to stir them one by one. Behind every thread of fate was a bountiful harvest. But I am only one person and cannot split myself. What a blissful worry. Chapter 1082. Happy New Year to everyone from DeLong is dead currently typing, please wait a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to receive the latest update. Chapter 1083. Every time he trained with the grey-mouthed iron dragon Orn, List could clearly feel that the power of destiny was pulling on the silk threads with greater strength. Destiny is indeed mysterious, but it's not so ethereal that it can't be captured. It also has a trajectory that needs to be followed. I may not understand what this trajectory is, but if I follow this feeling and operate according to the trajectory that the smoke dragon sensed, destiny will be a sword in my hand. Roar! Orn let out a dissatisfied roar. He was reminding List not to think about any other dragons when training with him. List didn't argue and just smiled. Understood, Orn. Let's continue. He concentrated on training with Orn, and one training session lasted for an entire day. His control of the dragon's soul world had reached an extremely proficient level. With the power of destiny, he could calmly guide the dragon's soul. It was far faster and easier to imprint than any dragon knight's training. Up until now, the Sun-Fire Dragon Orn no longer needed to train frequently, and the Invisible Dragon Bard no longer needed to train. After all, these two dragons had already graduated and completed the soul imprint. Only the Mountain Copper Dragon Marta, the Aluminum Dragon Connor, and the Water Dragon Wouter had not made much progress. Therefore, he spent most of the month with Orn, and the rest of the time was allocated to official duties. He presided over the transformation of the Fire Kingdom, from a grassroots government to a real kingdom. He set down various legal systems such as tax, justice, etiquette, and so on. But it was only limited to the Fire Island, and he built a family-style fiefdom. He was already a powerhouse at the top of the world, and he didn't have such a big demand for centralized power. As the soul of a modern civilization on Earth, he was very clear that there was no country that could prosper forever. However, a family could last for thousands of years, so it was enough for the Fire family to last forever. During his reign, it didn't matter if it was centralized power or knight feudalism. Would his followers dare to disobey his orders? It was already March. List went to a cheese mage tower for a walk. This mage tower had just been built, and it was located in the valley behind the Palace of Stars, Moon, and Palace of Stars. Originally, a Chi could have directly experimented in the Palace of Stars, Sun, and Moon, but because of an explosion, many rooms in the Palace of Stars were destroyed, and several servants were killed. Therefore, a Chi moved the laboratory out of the Palace of Stars and built it in the back of the mountain. An explosion here would at most kill a magician. As for a Chi herself, as the strongest magic shooter in history, even a dragon knight could not kill her, so a mere explosion was not even worth mentioning. Big brother, we've finished studying the connection between the golden apple tree and the bloodline fruit. Through the activation of the magic array, we can release the power of the golden apple tree and infect the surrounding plants to form the bloodline fruit. If this golden apple tree is fully activated, it can produce over 100 bloodline fruits. A Chi reported the results of her latest experiment. Back when he discovered the natural node on Wudong Island, the natural node was located in a large swamp. List named it Dreamy Cloud Swamp. 6 bloodline fruits grew on a piece of land in the Dreamy Cloud Swampland. Eventually, he dug out a piece of golden apple wood. A Chi had only recently found the time to study this piece of golden apple wood. Then let's hand it over to the Royal Arcana Academy as soon as possible and form a development team to cultivate it. List said to Chris, who was following behind him, also, contact the cabinet and select suitable livestock in World of Warcraft as soon as possible. When the bloodline fruit ripens, immediately feed them and evolve them. Like magic potions, World of Warcraft meat was always scarce. It was impossible to feed so many knights with the little World of Warcraft meat that they hunted. All the big nobles would collect bloodline fruits and try to evolve their livestock into World of Warcraft meat. The low-level World of Warcraft meat that relied on bloodline fruits to evolve might be seriously lacking in strength, but its nutritional value would be greatly increased. Most importantly, it was easy to raise. List also needed a large amount of World of Warcraft meat to provide nutrition for his knight. However, he had something better than World of Warcraft meat, dragon meat. Black blood horses, Banpo cattle, and estuary boars were the first 3 types of dragon meat. Nowadays, Banpo cattle had been mass-produced on the grasslands of Flame Island, and the milk they produced was specially for big nobles and talented young knights. Estuary boars had also become an indispensable food for the Burning Legion. In addition, with the Invisible Dragon Bard's climax every year, it had already provided a total of 17 space gems for List, accompanied by 6 new types of dragon meat: dragonhead fish, long-necked goose, hairy sheep, treehorn deer, big-eared elephant, and grass mud horse. Dragonhead fish were ordinary grass carps that had withstood the magic power of the dragon's bloodline and evolved. They had strong reproductive ability and high nutrition. The largest of them could grow up to 3 meters. They were simply the giants of freshwater. Long-necked goose were ordinary geese that had withstood the magic power of the dragon's bloodline and evolved. They grew to the size of a pony, and their combat power was comparable to that of a low-level World of Warcraft. Long-necked goose was full of nutrition, especially its goose eggs, which were large and plentiful. After being marinated, they were delicious. Hairy sheep were ordinary goats that had not yet expanded their population. However, their wool was very dense and grew a lot, which made the wool cloth very comfortable. Treehorn deer were ordinary reindeer that had evolved. Their antlers were like trees, which were very nutritious. Big-eared elephant were ordinary elephants that had just evolved. Their population had not yet expanded, and they only found that their strength had increased. Grass mud horse were ordinary alpacas that had just evolved. Their population had not yet expanded. Alpacas were livestock that used both meat and fur. Grass mud horses should be able to use their fur and meat to a higher value. Bard alone had brought a large number of dragon meat beasts to list, and there would definitely be more in the future. Unfortunately, the other dragons had not yet figured out how to achieve climax and release the magic power of the dragon's bloodline. Some dragons might not even achieve climax once in their lives. Your Majesty, please rest assured. Chris will complete the cultivation of the bloodline fruit as soon as possible. Chris Truth, the first Arcana Minister and the Dean of the Royal Magic Academy, nodded and replied. List no longer asked about this aspect of the content. Instead, he asked Achi, "What's your next research topic?" "Brother, didn't you say that you have a new dragon to tame?" So, Achi plans to study the emerald dragon's hind legs and try to figure out the cultivation method of the mind fruit tree, so that I can hoard more mind fruit trees for brother. Well, then I'll wait for your good news. Leaving the Mage Tower, List went to the Dragon Pit mine again, ready to seize the time to train with Ornn and strive to conquer the personal ninth dragon. However, when he rode the invisible dragon Bard to the Dragon Pit mine, he suddenly felt a mysterious wave. It's the feedback of the power of fate. He raised his eyebrows and had already captured the source of the wave. It seems that there is a big elf around waiting for me to pick. Just like the reminder of every smoke mission, he could now clearly grasp what the power of fate was guiding. At this moment, it was a big elf. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1084. Following his feeling, List rode on the grey iron dragon Ornn and headed towards the source of the threads of fate. This feeling was extremely mysterious, but exceptionally clear. After receiving the blessing of fate, this is the first time I have such a strong feeling towards the threads of fate. It seems that it's because the object of the feeling is a great elf that it's so clear. On the contrary, the threads of fate around me, no matter if it's something small or related to dragons, are not as strong. He was calculating. The threads of fate related to dragons were not strong enough because there were too many accidents that could happen. Although the threads of fate of other small things would not have too many accidents, because he did not pay much attention to them, the power of the threads was not strong enough. No matter what, the power of fate definitely had to be explored step by step. He did not know how long it would take for the smoke dragon to be born. During this period of time, he could only control the power of fate by himself. Unknowingly, he and Ornn had already flown from the Dragon Pit territory to the neighboring Amazon territory. The Amazon territory was located west of the Dragon Pit territory and north of the King's territory. It was adjacent to the saltwater sea, the fief of the mermaid Duke Blubboxy. This place had a typical tropical rainforest climate, with dense vegetation and crisscrossing rivers. However, because of this, the development difficulty was extremely high. Only the location of the territory and the main city had been planned. Orders of chivalry had incorporated the Moonkiller tribes here a few times. However, there should still be many Moonkiller tribes hiding here, playing hide-and-seek with orders of chivalry. Relying on the tall trees as a cover, it was difficult to wipe out the Moonkiller tribes. There were even many night tribes that died here. To completely incorporate them, they would have to burn down the entire forest. However, the humidity in this forest was very high, and it was not easy to ignite a large area of fire. At this moment, Liszt was hovering in the sky above the area that he named the Amazon rainforest. The threads of fate were indeed strong, but he could not pinpoint the exact location of the great elf. He had to find it himself. At the same time, he was using this opportunity to find the great elf to explore the use of the power of fate. Every action would trigger the threads of fate to a different extent. When he chose the appropriate action and triggered the threads of fate, he would be able to achieve his desired goal. It's a pity that Orn and I are unable to cooperate with the magic eye. Only the fire dragon, water dragon, and formless dragon can operate the magic eye to form a special and powerful vision. After he and Aoun became one, Aoun's vision was just a simple dragon's vision, and his vision was just clearer. Unable to observe the light of mana retroaction. He had to personally use the magic eyes with his naked eyes to observe. Fortunately, he now had supreme demonic dragon chi, and the effect of the magic eye was greatly enhanced. He could barely see the magic of the entire Amazon rainforest. There's too much light from the mana retroaction, but it's blocked by the trees, so I can't see it clearly. I can basically tell that most of it is the light of World of Warcraft. Also, my observation of the rainforest isn't pulling on the threads of fate, and it's going against the Grand Elf's fate. Therefore, he adjusted his plan and no longer focused on observing the rainforest. Instead, he focused on looking down from the sky. Following that, he made a few more adjustments, but he didn't sense any fate approaching that of a Grand Elf. Until he turned his gaze to the densely packed rivers and lakes in the Amazon rainforest. At this moment, he clearly felt that he was getting closer to the fate of that Grand Elf, or it could be said that the threads of fate that were connected to that Grand Elf were being pulled more violently. So, this is an aquatic Grand Elf? His gaze fell on a lake below. This lake was huge and connected to the main river in the rainforest. On the surface of the lake, a small part was covered by green plants, especially the huge round leaves, which were densely packed together. Aoun, let's go to the lake. Roar. One man and one dragon landed by the lake. Liszt approached the huge round leaves on the surface of the lake and carefully observed this plant. In his senses, the threads of fate were connected to this plant. Such a huge leaf, one piece is about the size of a house, like a lotus, but soon he shook his head. No, it's not like a lotus, it should be like a water lily. Only the leaves of a water lily float on the surface of the water. Liszt had seen lotus flowers and water lilies in parks on Earth before. These two plants were very similar, and many people easily confused them. But the leaves of a water lily floated on the surface of the water, while the leaves of a lotus grew out of the surface of the water and did not stick to the surface of the water. Actually, it's not like a water lily. The leaves of this plant are not only big, but also not flat. The edges are curled up, just like a bathtub. One plant has about 17 or 18 leaves, and the leaves at the edge have completely spread out. The leaf in the middle is like a triangle, and it's not big. A mature leaf was the size of a house, and all the leaves of the entire plant added together was equivalent to a giant. It was a gigantic water lily, yet it was so domineering. Liszt immediately named this new plant Monarch Lotus. Let's call it Monarch Lotus. The Grand Elf I'm looking for is likely a Monarch Lotus Grand Elf. Unfortunately, the Monarch Lotus does not have the light of mana retroaction. It's not a magic potion, and it doesn't seem to have any economic value. He lightly jumped onto a leaf of the Monarch Lotus and stood steadily on it, but there were faint signs of the leaf being trampled. This kind of leaf could not be used as a boat to glide. Among the 17 or 18 leaves, a flower and a few flower buds emerged from the surface of the water. Beside the flower bud, there was a black thing, which was probably the fruit. Liszt directly walked over and plucked the fruit, which was about the size of a person's arms. Then, he jumped onto the shore. Orn turned his head to take a look, and then he was indifferent. List peeled the fruit, and the sturdy outer skin easily broke under his powerful strength. Then, he revealed the corn-like grains inside. There were about a few hundred of them. Of course, they only looked like corn, but in fact, each grain was the size of a child's fist. His body was already immune to all poisons, and his battle energy was enough to dissolve everything. He directly peeled off a corn grain and took a light bite. Immediately, his eyes lit up. The taste is very fragrant, just like eating a pineapple. The fragrance lingers in the mouth, and the juice is plentiful. The seeds of the monarch lotus can be eaten as a fruit, and it's a very delicious fruit. This was good news. However, such a large monarch lotus only produced a few seeds, and its value was not high enough. No matter what, I have to find Great Elf Wang Lian first. He kept the seed into the space ring and mounted the grey-mouthed iron dragon Aun. Following the rivers and lakes, he started to search for new monarch lotuses. Finally, on a wide river, he saw the light of mana retroaction that he wanted to see. It was a giant king lotus floating on the water. The leaves were huge, and there were many of them. A single monarch lotus occupied half of the river, emitting chaotic colors of mana retroaction. On one of the leaves of the monarch lotus, there was a small elf lying on it, happily basking in the sun and sleeping soundly. Roar! Orn, who was connected to List's mind as one, let out a mischievous roar and rapidly released his fierce dragon aura. The overwhelming dragon's might and the deafening roar scared the sleeping Wang Lian out of her wits, causing her to fall into the river through the gaps between the leaves. 9 Heavens Divine Emperors. Chapter 1085. Wang Lian, who had fallen into the river, was unable to run away. List, who had the mermaid's heart contract, could easily catch her in the water as if he was walking on flat ground. He then jumped back onto a leaf of the monarch lotus worm grass. He carefully examined Wang Lian in his hand. Although this great elf lived on the surface of water, it was not a water elf. Or rather, although monarch lotus grew in lakes and rivers, it was not a marine plant. Therefore, Wang Lian was still a terrestrial elf. It had no gills, and had a pair of transparent wings on its back. On its head were 2 small monarch lotus leaves that hung on either side of its head. It was as if it had split its hair into 2 halves. It was cute and slightly comical. Its body was a crystalline pale white. This was the body color of most elves, nothing too special. It had large black eyes and exquisite facial features. It was very beautiful. But at this moment, Wang Lian's expression was fierce. It shouted angrily, "Ah, chi!" It was unknown what it meant. "Stop shouting, little fellow. You and I are fated." List stroked the leaf on Wang Lian's head. He was not in a hurry to form a contract. He was feeling the power of fate. As a person favored by fate who had fused with the smoke dragon, he had been constantly adapting and trying to control the power of fate. But the power of fate was an illusory existence. It could not be touched or seen, and could only be vaguely felt. It was very difficult to master it. After all, he was not the real smoke dragon. The smoke dragon had only been born in his mind. I started feeling Wang Lian's threads of fate near the dragon pit mine. Then, I searched all the way here. This process is considered to be stirring the threads of fate, or rather, controlling fate. After I captured Great Elf Wang Lian, this thread of fate came to an abrupt end. Suddenly stopping did not mean that the thread had broken, but that the thread had disappeared. Or rather, the power of fate that connected Wang Lian to List had suddenly disappeared. What a strange phenomenon. I still can't understand it. List felt for a long time, but still could not figure out the power of fate. Wang Lian, who was in his hand, had been shouting, "Ah, chi," for 15 minutes. Her voice was hoarse. Seeing that shouting didn't work, she hung lazily in List's hand, squinting her eyes as if she was basking in the sun. Since she couldn't resist, she might as well enjoy it. What a cute big elf. Come on, bite me. List snapped out of his reverie. He tightened the skin on his index finger and stuffed it into Wang Lian's mouth. Without waiting for Wang Lian to react, he tapped the tip of his index finger against her teeth. Immediately, her skin ruptured, and a drop of blood was squeezed out, mixing with Wang Lian's teeth. A miraculous connection was instantly established, and he and Wang Lian could already communicate on the spiritual level. He could feel that Wang Lian's heart was very calm. She simply wanted to bask in the sun and sleep. Perhaps everything would return to how it was before after a nap. There was no giant lizard with a thunderous voice, and there was no detestable bastard grabbing his neck. The sudden spiritual contract with List interrupted Wang Lian's pure heart, causing her to open her eyes in confusion. Ah Chi? What name do you think I should give you? List and Wang Lian looked at each other, thinking seriously. You are an elf that lives in the river. Actually, the name King of the River, Tam, suits you the best, but I gave the name Tam to a giant kelp elf. The giant kelp elf was Parker, and the giant kelp elves were Fitz, Tam, and Eddie. Since he had given the name to the giant kelp elf, List definitely couldn't take it back. But he quickly had a flash of inspiration. I remember that the full name of the King of the River is Tam Kench. Since Tam has already been given to the giant kelp elf, I'll give Kench to you. And so. While Wang Lian was in a daze and couldn't understand the situation in front of her, she already had a new name, Kench. Kench became List's 30th great elf, and was also one of the few great elves that List had named himself. He didn't bother to name the great elves that came from the Grey Iron family and the Earth Tyrant family, and just used their previous names. There were only 12 great elves that List had named himself. Kelp Grand Elf Parker, Pea Grand Elf Ash, Thorn Grand Elf Ella, Mangrove Grand Elf Nami, Potato Grand Elf Kutch, Banana Grand Elf Bobby, Corn Grand Elf Tick, Corn Grand Elf Mickey, Giant Konjac Grand Elf Carl, Calabash Grand Elf Cree, Coffee Grand Elf Mundo, and Wang Lotus Grand Elf Kenji. Of the remaining 18, 7 came from the Grey Iron family: oats, barley, apple, tomato, pea, white crystal chrysanthemum, and ice grass elf. 11 came from the Earth Tyrant family: stonewood, tobacco, black tea, barley, corn, iris, glutinous rice, ginger, beet, and 2 wheat elves. Kench. Kench snapped out of his daze and asked. He felt enmity towards List, but he also felt close to him. He was very conflicted. Remember, Kench. You are my great elf from now on. List wasn't in a hurry to explain. Instead, he carried Kench and leaped onto the back of the Grey Iron Dragon Orn. Now, let's go inspect the area where the Wang Lian grows, and see if there are any potion species. Wang Lian was a plant unique to the Amazon rainforest. As long as he searched along the river and lake, he would be able to find traces of Wang Lian. But after half an hour, he had already scanned a large area, but he still didn't find any Wang Lian with mana retroaction, nor did he find any new worm stalks or elves. Seems like there really aren't any. There's a mana retroaction glow on the lake's surface. List was instantly delighted, and he urged Orn to dive down. When he landed on the lake's surface, he could clearly see that there was a small patch of Wang Lian with light blue magical light floating on the lake's surface. Among them, there was even a Wang Lian with chaotic magical light. Great! There's a monarch lotus cordyceps, and there are quite a few monarch lotuses growing around it. Soon, he found the Wang Lian sprite worm hiding under a leaf. It was a chubby light green sprite worm. Ordinary sprite worms could no longer enter List's eyes, but this sprite worm with its own potion made List very excited. The reason was none other than the fact that with the Wang Lian, Kench's value would immediately soar. Ah Chi? Kench felt List's excitement and became more and more puzzled. Kench, it's time for you to show off your skills. In the future, plant the Wang Lian in the area under the influence of your worm stalks. The Wang Lian has a high requirement for the environment, so I'm afraid it can only be planted here. It will be difficult for my serfs to farm here for the time being. But it doesn't matter, I still have ugly fish. He quickly contacted the saltwater sea Duke Berbosi and had Berbosi command ugly fish to stay in the Amazon territory and be responsible for planting the Wang Lian. At the same time, he dug out a Wang Lian and sent it to the wizard tower, handing it over to the potion arcanists to refine into a potion and analyze its value. Kench, who had been brought around by List all along the way, was in a daze. Ah, chi? Chapter 1086. The monarch lotus was a gigantic plant with water attribute magic power. The concentration of magic power was not low, and one should be able to refine more than 10 potions. For an arcanist who specialized in refining potions, this task could be completed in half a day. List tried the completed potion himself. Although he was a fire attribute warrior, it did not hinder him from judging the quality of other potions. However, after drinking it, the impact of the potion was very weak. He then frowned. This is not right. The impact of magic power is not as strong as that of a normal potion. Potions were defined by the Royal Arcana Academy, Guild of Magic, into 6 levels: normal potion, special potion, strong potion, auxiliary potion, and dragon potion. The normal potion was the most common chaos attribute potion. The monarch lotus should at least be a normal potion. He did not expect it to be so low. Dean Chris also tried a monarch lotus potion. Whenever List came to the Royal Arcana Academy, Chris would be the one to receive him. Your Majesty, the monarch lotus potion is too weak. Of all the normal potions I've seen, this is probably the worst. Test it a few more times to see if it has any potential as an auxiliary potion. Yes. Chris then arranged for a special knight to come and help with the test. Unfortunately, the monarch lotus potion did not have any properties as an auxiliary potion. Now there is only one possibility left. Whether the monarch lotus potion has potential as a dragon potion, we can only leave it to you, Your Majesty, to test it yourself. Okay. List nodded. He took 2 monarch lotus potions and directly summoned the invisible dragon Bard. Yah! Come, Bard, let's go to the Mermaid City. When they arrived at the Mermaid City, List summoned the little water dragon Wouter and threw a monarch lotus potion to him. Try it and see if it has any effect on you. Yo-ho! Wouter directly crushed the potion bottle with his throat and swallowed the monarch lotus potion. As soon as magic power spread, he suddenly widened his dragon eyes and let out a joyful cheer. He sent a message to List using the Dragonheart code. This thing is strong. List, I want more. List, who did not have much hope, was very surprised. He casually tossed the second King Lotus potion to Walter, then turned around and rode on Walter's dragon tooth platform. With the heart and soul connection, he instantly understood the magic enhancement effect of the King Lotus potion on the water dragon. It can't compare to the enhancement effect of the fire dragon water on the fire dragon, but the difference isn't too big. It can be called a dragon potion. This was truly a pleasant surprise. He had only hoped that the Monarch Lotus potion could become a high-quality single common potion to make up for the Fire Kingdom's huge demand for potions. He never expected the Monarch Lotus potion to become a dragon potion in one go. However, after all, he had been through too many big scenes. After a brief moment of surprise, he calmed down. The potion extracted from the Phoenix parasol tree is very helpful to fire dragons, but the effect on other dragons is average. It's named Fire Dragon Potion. The potion extracted from the Monarch Lotus is very helpful to water dragons. I wonder if it's helpful to other dragons? If it was helpful, it could be called Blue Dragon Water or something like that. If it wasn't helpful, it could only be called Water Dragon Water. Yo-ho! Walter was still clamoring to take the potion. Don't be impatient. This is a newly discovered potion extracted from the monarch lotus. The monarch lotus hasn't been planted on a large scale yet. If you want it, you'll have to wait for at least half a year. He had already instructed Wuxia to order the clowns to plant the monarch lotus. However, even with the influence of the great sprite's worm stalk, the monarch lotus still needed time to grow. Yo-ho! Walter expressed his understanding, but requested that once the monarch lotus matured, all of it would be given to him. He would not allow anyone else or dragons to touch it. Don't worry. Liszt replied casually and sent the little water dragon away. He then quickly rode the invisible dragon Bard to the Amazon rainforest. Only 2 days had passed, but clowns had already arrived in the Amazon rainforest one after another. Wuxia had also personally followed the river and rushed to the Amazon territory to plan the monarch lotus plantation. The monarch lotus had to live in freshwater. Therefore, in order to plant as much as possible, he needed to plan a wide, crisscrossing body of water in the Amazon rainforest. It was tentatively set at a scale of 10,000 acres. The area of influence of the great sprite's worm stalk was usually between 4,800 acres to 7,200 acres. The area beyond that was reserved for cultivating new monarch lotus fairies. Riding on the back of the invisible dragon, one could see densely packed clowns combing the river and digging the lake. These were clowns with high intelligence. As the source of vitality potion improved their fertility, their population increased exponentially. Adult clowns could be seen everywhere with little clowns on their backs. The clowns did not live in a family unit, but their mothers would take care of them until they could live independently. Your Majesty, are you here to supervise the construction? This is only a small project of 10,000 acres of magic medicine field. Wuxia stood in the river. The water level only reached her waist. Every mermaid was very beautiful, but their bodies were too huge. They could only be seen from afar and not played with. Liszt jumped onto Wuxia's shoulder. He pointed at the busy clowns and smiled. This is not just 10,000 acres of magic medicine field. The potions refined from the monarch lotus have already been confirmed to have the value of dragon medicine. These 10,000 acres of monarch lotus will produce an endless supply of dragon medicine to feed my dragons. Of course, I still have to dig up a monarch lotus to test if it is effective on other dragons. Wuxia sighed in admiration. Your brilliance makes me unable to look straight at you. The value of dragon medicine is enormous. The 3 human kingdoms only have one kind of red dragon water, and you already have a second. My luck has always been good. Yes. Right, how is the research on the mermaid's source of vitality in the Royal Arcane Academy? Liszt asked. After solving the problem of the clown's reproduction, the arcanists had been researching the problem of the mermaid's reproduction. However, the mermaids reproduced asexually, so it was more complicated to solve. Wuxia sighed. I have already donated all my earnings to the Source of Vitality Laboratory, but there has been no good news so far. Don't worry, you still have a long life. 10 years is not enough for 20 years, and 20 years is not enough for 100 years. I believe that one day, the mermaids will regain their fertility. Your Majesty's glory, I hope that such a day will come. There will be. You continue to command, I am very busy, so I will go back first. He said a few words, then hurriedly plucked a monarch lotus and left the Amazon rainforest. The monarch lotus magic potion was only an interlude for this period of time. The most important thing was to train with the grey-mouthed iron dragon Aun and quickly stir the threads of fate of the unknown new dragon. A new monarch lotus magic potion was quickly refined into a magic potion, so he directly stuffed 2 magic potions into Bard and Aun's hands. Bard finished the potion and had no experience at all. Aun finished the potion and also had no experience at all. Unfortunately, this magic potion is only effective on water dragons. Sigh, it is only water dragon water, not blue dragon water. List shook his head. Actually, he was not very disappointed. In fact, just the water dragon water was enough to make him overjoyed. This was an unexpected surprise. The monarch lotus plantation was in full swing, and the water dragon water was listed as a special dragon medicine for the little water dragon. After finishing this interlude, List carefully sensed the threads of fate around him. There were no threads worth making a move on, so he calmed down and continued to crazily train with Aun. Time flew by. It was already the end of April. The figure of the night in Aun's spiritual world became clearer and clearer, and he was not far from successfully branding his spiritual imprint. At this moment, List's heart suddenly moved, and a mysterious feeling attacked him. That was the power of fate. At the same time, a thread of fate that was originally dim was stirred violently, and he could not ignore it. He focused a little. Then he sensed the source of this thread of fate. 8 Nia, Marquis of Great West is back. Chapter 1087. 8 Nia, the Marquis of Great West, was the oldest of the mermaids. Before the mermaids finished their sea voyage, she had brought the sea sprites back to the Fire Kingdom in advance. Your Majesty, I'm sorry for the delay. I've delayed your plans for the development of the sea in the Fire Kingdom. After seeing List in the Mermaid City, she immediately expressed her apologies. Obviously, she knew that List was not satisfied with the mermaid's absence for such a long time. One would not slap a smiling person. Moreover, mermaids were not knights. List did not choose to criticize the mermaids for strictly following the knight system and becoming loyal followers, so he nodded and said, "It's been a hard journey, Marquis 8 Nia. How are the other mermaids?" "Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty. They are living well in the sea. There are countless treasures in the sea that attract them. But they will soon finish mapping the coastline of the legendary continent, and then return to the Fire Kingdom to help Your Majesty develop the sea. We have never forgotten to purify the Devil's Sea. The purification of the Devil's Sea must be carried out. When the time is right, I will personally preside over it." List was also curious about the Malfa continent on the other side of the Devil's Sea. But rice must be eaten one bite at a time. He asked, "What about the sea sprites you brought back?" "They are all here." Following Atenia's call, a large number of sprites came. Most of them were sprite worms. There were a dozen lesser sprites and 2 greater sprites. These sprites had already been contracted with 8 Nia. List did not intend to contract aquatic sprites. It was more convenient to let the mermaids contract them. "What kind of sprites are they?" "This is a kelp sprite. I named it Shakalaka. This is a sea pine sprite. I named it Aristotle. This lesser sprite is..." 8 Nia introduced the aquatic sprites one by one. The kelp sprite and the sea pine sprite had names, but the others did not. Judging from the tone of her introduction, she had no liking for sprites and treated them as tools. After all, a long time ago, the Sea Kingdom would capture sprite worms and trade them with humans. In their view, sprites were like fishes and shrimps. Of course. During the era when mermaids ruled the Sea Kingdom, the elves only had sprite worms. Lesser sprites, greater sprites, and dragon sprites had yet to be born. Stupid sprite worms were indeed no different from fishes and shrimps. Well, you have to take good care of these sprites, especially the kelp great sprite. It can grow kelp, a valuable seafood. It just so happened that Bruno Bossi had been very busy recently. She had to develop the saltwater sea while helping me manage the Amazon rainforest. If you come back, you can take over the Amazon rainforest. As you wish. Etnia was easy to talk to. When you've accumulated enough battle merits, I'll confer you the title of Duke of Great Western and divide a sea as your fief, List said. Thank you for your generosity, Your Majesty. I will manage the Amazon rainforest well. After the official business was done, List began to ask Etnia about her special experiences during the cruise. Although they had the connection of the Devil Foundation, there were many things that couldn't be explained in detail through the Devil Foundation. The sea is far lonelier than the sea of the Moon Empire era. Your Majesty, the era I lived in was probably at the end of the Moon Empire era, even many years after the Moon Empire disappeared. At that time, the pollution of the cursed dragon had already shrouded the sea, but it was still more lively than the sea now. Etnia continued with emotion. In our era, the sea not only had a large number of intelligent marine races, such as mermaids, nagas, clowns, sirens, and so on. There were also countless sea monsters, and even the sea giant Leviathan was not rare. However, during this voyage, all I saw was desolation. Without the intelligent marine races, mermaids, nagas, and clowns had completely disappeared. Even the remains of the palaces of the former Sea Kingdom were not found. Sea monsters that roamed the sea were also rare. The only magical creature found was the flood dragon, the Hydra. We organized several collective hunts, but the Hydra escaped. The location of the Hydra is probably in this sea. She pointed to a map of the legendary continent that was gradually outlined, her fingertips pointing to the sea north of the continent. This sea was located in the coastal area of the noble Frost Empire. When I have time, I will take action with a chi and capture this Hydra. It is reasonable to say that the flood dragon has extraordinary intelligence. Maybe it can tame the Hydra as a guardian beast, just like taming the giant lion Nimia. List was very envious of this Hydra. He was envious of all magical things. Your Majesty, I also met a siren in the sea of the unsetting Light Empire. She used to live on land. According to her conversation, the language of the unsetting Light Empire was a high-level clear text, similar to the grammatical structure of the Moon language. It was far closer to the Moon language than the Wind language and the Snake language. No matter how close it is not the Moon language. The only one that inherited the civilization of the Moon Empire and the Sun Empire is the Fire Kingdom. List chuckled. What else did you communicate with that siren? I asked her if she was willing to come to the Fire Kingdom. She said she was not willing. Although sirens were rare in the sea, a chi was not the only one. In the past, List had seen the old siren, Izzy. However, Izzy's magic talent was poor. In the historical records, there were no records of sirens having magic talent. From this point of view, a chi was unique. However, sirens were really beautiful. Did you talk about the situation of the unsetting Light Empire with the siren? Sorry, I am not interested in the unsetting Light Empire, so I did not talk about it. And after all, there is a gap in our language, so I stumbled and did not have a pleasant conversation. Compared to His Excellency Achilles, that siren is too ignorant and too childish. The return of Etnia was undoubtedly a great help to the marine industry. The number of clowns was increasing, and it was impossible to rely on a mermaid like Blue Bushy to completely control them. So List continued to crazily train with the grey-mouthed iron dragon Orn. Just like that, time flew into the future without stopping. At the same time, the Royal Arcane Academy on Flame Island and the various laboratories affiliated to the Academy were constantly launching magical technology products. Most of them were inventions related to the people's livelihood. The Arcanist system had steadily moved towards the scholar route that List had conceived. Mages no longer prioritized learning powerful magic. After the name change, the primary goal of the Arcanists was to concentrate on researching all kinds of magical technology and inventions. In this context, the Royal Shipyard in the Whirlpool Estuary City, as well as the Ship Laboratory jointly invested by the Royal Shipyard and the Royal Arcane Academy. The chief arcanist of the laboratory, Inuit Truth, announced that the era of sailing ships was about to become a thing of the past. The magic ship was officially born. Chapter 1088. When Liszt first came to this world, the Sapphire Duchy was at the forefront of navigation technology, reaching the era of horizontal sailing. Later, Liszt introduced vertical sails, and hybrid sailboats became the main force of the Fire Kingdom. The entire Fire Archipelago used hybrid sailboats for navigation trade, as well as for every war. Even fishing boats used a combination of horizontal sails and vertical sails. However, hybrid sailboats, no matter how advanced, could not jump out of the limitations of sailboats and must be driven by wind. Therefore, he had been asking the arcanists of the Royal Arcane Academy to research a steam engine that could be driven by boiling water. However, the steam engine involved the structure of many mechanical parts, which could not be completed overnight. Moreover, the arcanists here were not sensitive to pure mechanical creations. Therefore, the steam engine was difficult to produce. Even if a few models were made, they looked like toys. Even if Liszt told the arcanists that the power of boiling water was infinite, the arcanists would not understand. No matter how powerful the power of boiling water was, could it be as powerful as the power of magic? Could it be as powerful as the power of dragons? Inuit Truth, the arcanist who was once named by the Smoke Mission, was the first to develop a new generation of hybrid sailboats by combining horizontal sails and vertical sails. His attitude towards the steam engine was no different from that of the general arcanists, and he also trusted magic more. Therefore, he did not develop steam ships, but based on the idea suggested by Liszt, he studied another kind of ship, the magic ship. Before him, there was Gundulf Truth, who invented the magic bicycle and appeared on the cover of Great Arcanist. Inspired, Inuit began to combine magic with ships. In the continuous experiments in the ship laboratory, he finally combined the magic array with the propeller and completed the research and development of the first magic ship. It is worth mentioning that the structure of the propeller was taught by Liszt. All my research results were realized under the unparalleled and wise guidance of His Majesty the King. It was His Majesty the King who commissioned me to design ships and told me that ships should get rid of oars and sails, and use propellers to propel them, that I was able to design the magic ship. When Inuit was interviewed on the cover of Great Arcanist, he spent a whole page complimenting His Majesty Liszt for his help in the research and development of the magic ship. He even named the thruster, Flame Thruster, to curry favor. The so-called propeller was just an ordinary propeller that was powered by a magic array. The propeller was used to propel the flow of water. And so the magic ship was born. The standard speed of the magic ship can reach 70 knots, which is several times faster than the current fastest Iron Dragon warship, which is 20 knots. In theory, magic ships can increase the speed of their propellers infinitely. 70 knots is just a speed that saves on magic power consumption. If you don't care about magic power consumption and the hull is sturdy enough, you can reach 700 knots. Inuit boasted about the magic ship in high spirits. In the era of hover sail, the fastest palace sailing ship in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire could only sail at 10 knots, a little over 18 kilometers per hour. In the era of hybrid-powered sailboats, the fastest Iron Dragon warship in the Fire Kingdom could reach a speed of 20 knots, which was a little more than 37 kilometers per hour. Now that the magic ship had reached a speed of 70 knots, it could travel at a speed of 130 kilometers per hour. Moreover, this speed would not be affected by the wind. Even if the wind was strong and against the wind, it would still be able to reach more than 100 kilometers per hour. In the summary of the interview of Great Arcanist, Inuit and his invention of the magic ship were described as follows: with the invention of the magic ship by the chief arcanist Inuit Truth, the prelude of the age of great navigation has slowly begun. It is conceivable that in the future, humans will sail the magic ship on the sea as freely as a knight riding a horse on the continent. There was a suspicion of excessive boasting. In fact, with the opening of the magic transmission circle, the age of great navigation had become less important. The communication between the Fire Kingdom and the legendary continent basically did not need to be completed by sea. However, the invention of the magic ship was still very important, it meant that the development of the sea had rapidly risen to a new level. For this reason, Liszt personally returned from the Dragon Pit mine and received Inuit and his ship Laboratory Arcanist team in the Palace of Stars, Sun, Moon, and Stars. He talked to Inuit in a very friendly manner. Inuit, the magic ship has been freed from the limitation of sails. Maybe it can be made bigger. A ship can carry 1 orders of chivalry or even a dragon. Your next research direction can be in this direction. I need to transport the knight and the dragon by sea. As you wish, Your Majesty, I will seriously think about how to strengthen the magic ship. Very good. Liszt was very happy. Of course, he did not really need to use the magic ship to transport the knight to conquer the legendary continent. It was not efficient enough. Building a magic transmission circle to conquer the legendary continent quickly was the way to go. However, he thought of another continent, the Malfa continent. It was difficult to find a natural node that led directly to the Malfa continent through the magic transmission circle. Therefore, if he wanted to explore the Malfa continent, he still had to cross the Devil's Sea. If it was him, he could just follow a Chi and the mermaids and swim together. However, not only did he want to go by himself, but he also wanted to lead an army there. He had to build some dragon carrier that could transport the dragon. After all, he did not know the situation of the Malfa continent. If he wanted to go there, he would have to send an army. Only a strong dragon could cross the river. The magic ship caused a lot of excitement in the Fire Kingdom, but it was only a few days of enthusiasm. The magic transmission circle between Jade City and Realgar City had already made the Fire Kingdom a kingdom on land. The age of great navigation was not among the goals of many nobles. For the nobles of the kingdom, the way to explore the sea was to plunder the legendary continent. After the enthusiasm subsided, they quickly forgot about the magic ship. Regarding this, Liszt could only say, how could a sparrow and a swallow know the ambition of a great swan? Of course, he did not need the short-sighted nobles to understand his great goal. He had already returned to the Dragon Pit mine and continued to train with the grey-mouthed iron dragon Orn. However, very quickly, a flickering thread of fate attracted him. Following the thread, he felt the source of the thread of fate, the great P-elf, Ai-shi. After carefully analyzing it, he suddenly opened his eyes wide and could not help but laugh out loud. Huh, great news, Ai-shi actually evolved successfully. After subduing the grey-mouthed iron dragon Orn 2 years ago, Ai-shi quickly fell in love with this dragon. It took a long time for a great elf to evolve into a dragon elf. Some great elves could even like a dragon for more than 10 years. Not every great elf could evolve successfully in such a short time like the Phoenix Tree Great Elf. Therefore, Ai-shi only completed her evolution after waiting for more than 2 years. He hurriedly returned to the Palace of Stars and Sunday. As soon as he entered the palace that belonged to Ai-shi, he saw a beautiful, tall and straight dragon elf. She was naked and holding a piece of rope in her hand. After seeing Liszt, Ai-shi, who had just grown into a pea-dragon elf, revealed a sweet smile. Liszt, I evolved, and I feel that my rope skills have also improved. Do you want to appreciate it? 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1089. Of course, there was no need to appreciate rope art. However, Liszt circled around the pea sprite, or to be precise, the pea-dragon sprite, Ai-shi. Very excellent, Ai-shi. You did not disappoint me. Now you have become the 4th dragon sprite of the Flame family. The pea plantation can be fully cultivated. I thought you would like rope art very much. Ai-shi did not answer the question. Ahem, I am indeed interested in the art of rope art, but I don't have the time. I will arrange for the servants in the palace to cooperate with you and let you carefully display your artistic talent. Ai-shi shook her head and said disappointedly, unfortunately, many of those servants are too vulgar and don't understand what my rope art is trying to express. Liszt, I thought you would understand. Only rope art can fully display the curves of beautiful things. You can slowly search among the servants. I believe there will be people who can understand your pursuit of the perfect curve. And you can also spread it among the elves. Perhaps the elves will understand. They won't understand. The pea sprites are just a bunch of fools. Even if they are born as pea sprites, they won't understand. AI, she said very seriously, most elves are fools. Carly, Yachty, and Infant are fools as well. And this trait of foolishness is most obvious in Ella. Carly was a man-eating tree dragon elf, Yachty was a buckwheat dragon elf, and Infant was a phoenix parasol tree dragon elf. Obviously, AI, she looked down on these 3 dragon elves. As for Ella, most of the elves seemed to look down on Ella. Fortunately, Ella was still pursuing dragons and trying to evolve. After announcing the failure of the aluminum dragon Connor, she began to struggle with the mountain dragon Marta, looking for each other's shining points, hoping to make herself fall in love with the mountain dragon Marta. This allowed the sun, moon, and stars palace to enjoy a period of peace. As long as you understand in your heart, some things don't need to be said. I understand. AI, she sighed, unfortunately, I can understand you, but very few of you can understand me. Rope art is such a noble art. List, as a king, a top existence among the nobles, you really should learn rope art to dress yourself. After evolving into a dragon elf, she's IQ and eloquence had obviously improved greatly, but her aesthetic sense was still as strange as ever. Hee. List decisively ended the conversation. Now that you are a dragon elf, do you need me to prepare a few sets of clothes for you to change into? AI, she lowered her head and thought for a moment before replying, performing the rope technique naked is the essence of art. However, I still have to face the eyes of the secular world. In that case, customize a few sets of clothes for me. No problem. After leaving Ike's palace, List couldn't help but wipe the sweat off his forehead. Most of the elves under his command had different personalities. Apart from Ella, the most unique one was probably Ike, who was addicted to the art of rope. Ike was once the spirit of the Marquis of P Island, D. Maria Yuhuasher. D. Maria must be a pervert in private. Ike's interest in rope skills must have been learned from this guy. I have to say, under the sanctimonious appearance of the aristocrats, there is a perverted side. Your Majesty, will you be staying in the palace for dinner tonight? Asked the head butler of the internal court, Carter. List shook his head. Mr. Carter, there is no need to prepare dinner for me. I will leave the palace in a while. The threads of fate related to the new dragon were becoming clearer and clearer. He needed to work harder and not rest. If he did, he might miss this rare opportunity. For him, the Fire Kingdom was a small matter. The dragon was a big deal. Carter hesitated. Seeing this, List said, Mr. Carter, what is the matter? It's like this, Your Majesty. You rarely stay in the sun, moon, and stars palace. Her Highness Emily has gone back to the palace to have a meal a few times, but she always seemed unhappy. Her Highness must really want to have a meal with you, Your Majesty. Carter was old and wise, so he naturally understood some of the twists and turns. Oh, I will find time to invite Emily to eat together, List replied honestly. He did not need to hide his feelings for Emily. This was the dragon knight that he had carefully cared for and raised from a young age. Emily, who was 16 years old this year, was already an adult. From a dry little girl in the past, she had grown into a powerful woman with beautiful curves. She was as dazzling as a budding flower. Riding on the gray-mouthed iron dragon Orn and leaving the palace, he was still sighing in his heart. Emily has grown up. It is time for me to fulfill my promise. May had just arrived. The knight figure in the spiritual world of the gray-mouthed iron dragon Orn stopped when it was about to reach completion. Very soon, List understood why. Orn, you have a knot in your heart. Roar. Orn replied honestly. He did have a knot in his heart. In the past, he was the dragon of the Grey Iron Duchy and was like-minded with the first Grey Iron Grand Duke. The spiritual imprint of the first Grey Iron Grand Duke had already been erased, but that memory was still preserved in his heart. It was this memory that became the stumbling block that prevented Liszt from completing the spiritual imprint. He thought for a while and decided, why don't we travel to the ruins of the Grey Iron Duchy and reminisce about your memories of the first Grey Iron Grand Duke? Relax, maybe the knot in your heart will be solved soon. Roar. Orn nodded in agreement. Hence, a human and a dragon flew up into the sky and went straight to the Jade Rock Mountain Magic Gate. They passed through the majestic Jade Teleportation Formation and arrived at the majestic Yellow Plains. This was the fief of Yevich Water Peanut. However, Yevich was still farming in the Snowstorm Mountain Duchy. The person in charge of majestic Yellow City was his wife's brother. Liszt didn't know Yevich's wife's brother. He wasn't interested in getting to know him. After passing through the magic gate, he flew away without saying a word. He flew all the way to the northwest, passing through the dense primeval forest. When he was tired, he would land on the top of a mountain to rest. With the magic platform to communicate with the outside world, he could still manage the Fire Kingdom even if he went far away. There was no need for him to stay in the palace all the time. This primeval forest is in urgent need of development. The Eagle Kingdom has no plans to develop it, so it should be taken over by the Fire Kingdom. It's a pity that the population is a big problem. There aren't even enough people to develop Flame Island, let alone this place. After I swallow up the Eagle Kingdom, I'm afraid it will still be very difficult to develop it. Development required population. Without a few generations of continuous reproduction, the population couldn't grow. However, once the population grew, the output of elves wouldn't be able to keep up, which would restrict development. In order to get rid of the restrictions of the elves, it was necessary to vigorously develop magic farming, reviving the era of the ancient Moon Empire. At that time, humans had a bad attitude toward sprite worms, treating them as raw materials for making magic power dust instead of using them for farming. Farming relied entirely on magic. Liszt's vigorous development of the arcane system was also based on the idea of arcanists being able to improve agricultural conditions. Even without elves, agriculture could still flourish. And this point might fall on the research of druid magic. He had always restricted arcanists from researching druid transformation magic, but he encouraged druid planting magic. The magic plant seeds collected from the sky ship were all handed over to the arcanists for research. So far, a small part of the magic plants cultivated by the arcanists had already grown lush and verdant, but the problem of slow growth had yet to be solved. Chapter 1090. Under the name of the Royal Arcane Academy, there was a magic laboratory called Natural Source. This laboratory did not follow the Chief Arcanist system, but was similar to the Scientific Research Institute system. The Natural Source Laboratory focused on the development of magic plants and was divided into several research groups. Magic beans, magic wheat, magic melons, magic eggplants, magic peppers, magic ginseng, magic lotus, magic orange, magic pear, magic sunflower, transformation tree. Each magic plant had a corresponding research group that specialized in how to grow them. According to the different environmental requirements of different magic plants, the Natural Source Laboratory had branch laboratories in many cities of the Flame Island, and special plantations were planned. Even on the Black Horse Island of the Sapphire Duchy, there was a branch laboratory of the Natural Source Laboratory, where several kinds of magic plants were cultivated in the early stages. However, it had been 4 or 5 years since the cultivation of the magic plants began, and no fruit had been harvested. Magic plants were big trees cultivated by nature magic. Even a legume magic plant like the magic beans would grow into a big tree like a fruit tree. This process took 10 years to bear fruit. After another 10 years, the output of the magic bean tree would gradually increase until it entered the fruitful period after 40 years. In theory, during the fruitful period of magic beans, a single tree could produce 50,000 caddies of magic beans annually, and a magic bean tree could survive for hundreds of years. It was not known whether the Moon Empire relied on this kind of magic plants to provide food, but at least the Sun Empire of the Malfa continent must have eaten magic plants as food. The mages of the Malfa continent should have developed into druids, which was very different from the mages of the legendary continent. Unfortunately, theory was theory. The growth of the magic beans in the Fire Kingdom was slower than expected, and it seemed that they did not adapt to the environment here. The magic beans cultivated on the Black Horse Island for 4 or 5 years, not to mention growing into a big tree, were just small crooked saplings. The same was true for other magic plants. When a chief first studied the growth cycle of magic plants, List was disheartened for a time. By the time he counted on magic plants to provide food, he was already 50 or 60 years old. However, when the Fire Kingdom was preparing for the founding of the nation, in order to create a foundation for eternity, coupled with the enthusiasm of the mages for nature magic, he began to vigorously support the research of magic plants again. It was under these conditions that the Natural Source Laboratory was integrated and independent from the Guild of Magic, and recently, it was affiliated to the Royal Arcane Academy. The cultivation of magical plants cannot be done without arcanists. The efficiency of ordinary arcanists is not high, so specialized druids are the most suitable. I wonder if I can find some bloodline of the Sun's child after I open up the Malfa continent and develop them into a specialized farming race. The current clues seem to indicate that the Sun's child of the Malfa continent seemed to have died. Although Phil, the old leathersmith, had been forced to reproduce by the Arcana Masters, allowing the territory to have many descendants of the Sun, it would still take a long time for these descendants to grow up and spread their branches. Leaning on the back of the grey-mouthed iron dragon Aun, List looked at the dense forest in the surroundings and lamented, 10,000 years is too long, I can only seize every minute. He wasn't in a hurry to travel with Orn. According to the memory provided by Orn, it was originally born in the west of the Eagle Kingdom, probably at the border with the Blast Furnace Kingdom. Most of its childhood memories were vague, and it did not know where it came from. However, before it reached adulthood, it met the first Duke of Grey Iron, who was only a marquis, Payak Mulan. Mulan was a type of flower. It was worth mentioning that after the fall of the Grey Iron Duchy, Duke Piero changed his surname to Grey Iron. His son, Pyford, brought the family back to the Eagle Kingdom and restored the surname Mulan. The first Duke of Grey Iron was far more charismatic than his descendants. He became a perfect Sky Knight at a young age, and then met the grey-mouthed iron dragon Aun, who was secretly hunting for food. It was like love at first sight between humans, and love between humans and dragons. Orn and Payak fell in love at first sight, and not long after, they completed the Battle of the Soul. There weren't many ups and downs in the story, and there weren't any heroic scenes like a hero saving a dragon, or a parting of life and death, or sacrificing one's life for righteousness. However, Payak and Orn lived a carefree life, traveling and fighting everywhere. It was only in their later years that they founded the Grey Iron Duchy. Not long after, Payak passed away, and Orn became the Grey King, who protected the Grey Iron Duchy. This is a dragon that attaches importance to companionship. A trip that he can leave whenever he wants to is better than any other method of breaking in. Feeling that the knot in Orn's heart was starting to loosen, he couldn't help but observe and conclude, he had never given up on creating the List Dragon Knight Training Manual. Different dragons had different training methods. If it was an ordinary Dragon Knight, he could only achieve perfection by finding the most perfect training method. He usually relied on external forces to force perfection. With the blessing of the power of fate, he was so willful. However, in order for his descendants to be able to successfully ride a dragon, he still had to summarize his experience. Roar! Orn let out a sound that sounded like a spoiled child. He wanted to drink potions. I don't have the red dragon water for now, only some ordinary potions. Just make do with it. List took out a handful of ordinary potions and threw them to Orn. Orn swallowed the potion and let out a happy roar. He didn't complain because it wasn't the red dragon water. For it, magic potions and whatnot were secondary. It was enough for it to be able to travel around with its own knights. It focused on spiritual perception, not material perception. So, they traveled all the way to the west. When they arrived at the former Grey Iron Duchy that had been abolished and merged back into the Eagle Kingdom, they entered the environment that Orn was familiar with. In his spiritual world, List's figure was already completely clear and he had become an existence of flesh and blood. In other words, the knot in his heart was removed and the soul imprint was successful. At this moment, List had officially become a Grey Iron Dragon Knight with a perfect stage. At the same time, he felt that one of the threads of fate that surrounded him suddenly flickered. He concentrated and plucked this thread of fate. Very quickly, he successfully felt the source of the thread of fate. It involved a dragon that was waiting for him. This is the power of fate. If I go with the flow, I will be able to enjoy the results. He stopped paying attention to the power of fate and reconnected with Orn through the soul integration. Let's go, Orn. I feel a dragon in the distance, waiting to join the Fire Kingdom. Roar. Orn was a little unhappy. He didn't like List thinking about other dragons at this time. However, the soul imprint was successful. No matter how much he disliked it, he couldn't resist List's decision. He flapped his wings and flew into the sky. Under List's guidance, he flew towards the wild forest in the southwest direction. The land had already entered the mountains from the plains. The terrain was getting steeper and steeper. There were fast-flowing rivers and towering mountain peaks. It was like flying into 100,000 mountains. All kinds of World of Warcraft birds were hovering in mid-air. The dense forest revealed the light of mana retroaction. This was the paradise of World of Warcraft. There were no humans to disturb them. Do you see it, Orn? Roar. It's right there, behind that snowy mountain. Go over and you'll be able to see it. I can already feel it more and more clearly. It's a beautiful sapphire dragon. Solid mana, making power also solid. This feeling. Yes, it's the Royal Sapphire Dragon. Li Ji's masterpiece, the Tiger King, was a young man dressed in hemp clothes. Heavy snow pressed down on a black dragon. There were wine, knives, and stories in this pugilistic world. Chapter 1091. The Royal Sapphire Dragon was a type of sapphire dragon. The color of the gemstone produced by this sapphire dragon was called royal blue. The royal blue's color saturation was very high. It was bright and bright. Under the illumination of the sun, it would emit a shimmering halo. Upon careful observation, one could see that there was a hint of bright purple in the deep blue. The reason why it was named Royal was that this sapphire dragon was the symbol of the Blue Dragon Empire. According to legend, the first emperor was a Royal Sapphire Dragon Knight. After he established the Blue Dragon Empire and proclaimed himself as the emperor, his mount was called the Royal Sapphire Dragon. Not only is the Royal Sapphire Dragon noble, but the gemstones it produces are also worthy of this noble name. List searched for the Royal Sapphire Dragon while recalling the information of this dragon. Royal Sapphire has the nature of sturdy magic. It can greatly strengthen magic and battle energy, increasing the user's combat power. Perhaps the increase for the Sky Knight is relatively small, but equipping the Earth Knight can definitely double the combat power of the Orders of Chivalry. If one had to compare, the Royal Sapphire Dragon was roughly equivalent to the magic metal dragon of the Metal Dragons. Its combat power was definitely inferior, but its actual value was similar. Roar. The grey-mouthed iron dragon Aun did not sense the Royal Sapphire Dragon, but he was seriously dissatisfied that List was thinking about the Royal Sapphire Dragon at the moment. However, the soul imprint had been successful, so he did not care much about Aoun's dissatisfaction. Let's hurry, Leo. There will be more and more such things in the future. You need to adapt in advance. I am the king of the Fire Kingdom, the future emperor of the Fire Empire. I will unify the legendary continent and the Malfa continent, and build a civilization across the entire planet. All the dragons will be reserved by me. Roar! Aoun was speechless at such a thick-skinned thought. The mountains were getting higher, and the snow was getting thicker. They were almost at the border between the Eagle Kingdom and the Yellowstone Kingdom. The geographical climate was somewhat similar to the Sichuan-Tibet line on Earth. However, there was still lush vegetation below the snow line. If I fly further, I will enter the plateau area and cross the border into the Yellowstone Kingdom. He activated the magic eyes and carefully observed the snow mountains and dense forests on the ground. Although the threads of fate are clearly linked to the Royal Sapphire Dragon, they cannot give me an accurate location. The threads of fate represented by the power of fate were not precise tracking devices, but rather a mysterious feeling. He needed to rely on Orn's senses of dragons to lock onto the specific location. We will circle around this snowy mountain. Pay attention and sense carefully. See if you can sense the location of the Royal Sapphire Dragon. Roar! Take your time. There's no need to rush. With our speed, we'll be able to sense it sooner or later. Roar! You're saying that if the Royal Sapphire Dragon hides in the cave, it will interfere with your sensing range. Let's look for it first. Anyway, we have time. It's normal to spend 10 days to half a month for the Royal Sapphire Dragon. For the sake of a new dragon, List naturally would not waver. Even if they had to spend a year and a half here, as long as they could obtain the Royal Sapphire Dragon, it would be worth it. This search lasted for 5 days. He could sense that the Royal Sapphire Dragon was nearby, but no matter how many times he went back and forth, Orn was unable to trigger the connection between dragons. We can basically lock onto it. With this place as the center, the Royal Sapphire Dragon will definitely exist within a radius of 800 kilometers. But I don't know why there's no feedback from the carpet search. The magic I can't see the feedback light, and Orn can't sense it either. The search yielded no results, so List decisively started a second search. Again, Orn. This time, the minimum sensing range of our carpet search is 50 kilometers. Even if the Royal Sapphire Dragon can hide its breath, it can't be shorter than 50 kilometers. The sensing range between dragons was usually about 100 or 200 kilometers, and the lowest was rarely less than 100 kilometers. At present, List only knew that the invisible dragon bard could rely on the material boundary to avoid and reduce the sensing range to 15 kilometers. No matter how noble the name of the Royal Sapphire Dragon was, it was just a sapphire dragon. It could not be compared to a sacred dragon. 2 weeks later, the carpet search of 50 kilometers was over, but the location of the Royal Sapphire Dragon was still not found. Standing on the top of a snow-capped mountain, Orn sprawled lazily on the snow, yawned, and then fell asleep. He was not enthusiastic about finding the Royal Sapphire Dragon. List jumped off the dragon tooth platform and stood in the knee-deep snow. He frowned as he looked at the surrounding snow-capped mountains and lush valleys. The threads of fate have always pointed to this place. Why can't I find the Royal Sapphire Dragon? According to the rules of the Smoke mission, I have already completed the prerequisite mission, complete Greymouth Iron Dragon Spiritual Brand. Now, it's basically a part of receiving the reward. It shouldn't have taken so long. Could it be that the Royal Sapphire Dragon can really block the dragon sensing? He thought. He took out a mirror-like thing from the space ring. It was the magic compass that Laird Truth had brought. This magic equipment could detect high-level magic in the surroundings. However, at this moment, after the magical compass was activated, only List and Orn's flickering light could be seen on it. It's useless. After 2 carpet searches, the magical compass has no effect at all. Its detection range is much weaker than the dragon's perception. Withdrawing the magic compass, he took out a broken crystal blade and blew away the surrounding snow with his aura. He was ready to set up camp and rest here. This strangely shaped sword was inlaid with densely packed crystals, which shone brightly under the sunlight. Against the backdrop of the strange sword, List's whole person looked heroic and vigorous. He was wearing a set of World of Warcraft leather armor made from the skin of a high-level World of Warcraft, golden cheetah. Its defense was not necessarily strong, but the glittering golden lines, coupled with the magic metal embellishment, made it look top-notch. The current List no longer pursued external forces. The defense of any equipment, even if it was made from dragon scales, was not as strong as the defense of his phoenix incarnation. The sharpness of any weapon, even if it was made from dragon teeth or dragon souls, was not as sharp as the bone dragon Winnie's bone dragon sword or the fire dragon Leo's rat halos. The broken crystal blade and golden leather armor were just beautiful embellishments to show off his majesty as a king. Looking up at the bright sun above his head, List put aside the worry of not being able to find the royal sapphire dragon. He wanted to recite a poem to the white snowy mountains, the scenery of the north, thousands of miles of ice, 10,000 miles, before he could finish his sentence. A bright dark blue color suddenly rose from the top of a snowy mountain in the distance, flying into the sky against the sunlight. Even though it was far away, he could still see clearly that it was a blue dragon that was flying happily. He did not know if it was an illusion, but when the dragon flew, it would always leave a light blue trail that slowly dissipated. "Quick, wake up, Orn." List casually kept the broken crystal blade and jumped onto Orn's dragon tooth platform. "The royal sapphire dragon has appeared, let's chase after it." Roar. Orn flapped his wings and stomped on the ground with his hind legs, shooting straight into the sky like a gray arrow. The wind whistled in his ears. List had a smile on his face, his gaze firmly locked on the blue figure in the distance, and he continued to recite a poem. "I can wear out iron shoes in fruitless search, but by chance I find it without even looking." Chapter 1092. The gray-mouthed iron dragon Aun did not conceal its aura, so its aura was soon sensed by the royal sapphire dragon flying happily in front. Roar. The royal sapphire dragon's roar had no special tone, but the tone made it easy for List to understand that it was warning the gray-mouthed iron dragon not to approach him. Dragons were not hostile to each other. But there was absolutely no friendly atmosphere between dragons. This situation was more similar to the feeling between elves. Each dragon was an individual, and there was rarely a group phenomenon. As the noblest creature in the world, the arrogant character of dragons did not allow them to live in groups. There were even some evil dragons in the wild who tried to hunt young dragons. The nutrition of young dragons was far better than any World of Warcraft or potions. Of course, there were few wars between adult dragons. Even the most powerful adult fire dragons among the elemental dragons, gem dragons, and metal dragons could easily defeat some weak adult dragons. But to completely kill an adult dragon, a huge price had to be paid, and it was very likely that the price was paid, but it was not necessarily killed. It was a waste of magic power. Therefore, the royal sapphire dragon only issued a warning, then turned and flew into the distance. "Aun, tell it to stop. We will use peaceful measures before resorting to force." List would not let the royal sapphire dragon go just like that. In any case, he was determined to have this beautiful gem dragon. Roar. Aun let out a roar. Roar. The royal sapphire dragon turned its head to warn again. The warning was useless. List drove the gray-mouthed iron dragon toward the royal sapphire dragon regardless, and soon the distance between the two was shortened. The royal sapphire dragon was not afraid of the gray-mouthed iron dragon, so it had no intention of escaping. When the gray-mouthed iron dragon approached, it quickly turned around and issued a final warning to the gray-mouthed iron dragon. Roar! Roar! The two dragons, separated by 800 meters, hovered in mid-air and confronted each other. Sunlight shone down on the gray-mouthed iron dragon, reflecting a faint glow. When it shone on the royal sapphire dragon, it flashed a magnificent bluish-purple halo, as if it was wearing a coat weaved by the glow. List had to admit that the royal sapphire dragon's appearance was at the peak of gem dragons. He was second only to the invisible dragon bard. Its body length is approximately 55 meters, and its wingspan is approximately 65 meters. Its wingspan is longer than its body length, so it doesn't appear bloated. Instead, it appears somewhat slender and soft. Its blue dragon scales with a hint of purple in them are exquisite and translucent, and its body's curves and proportions are perfect. It's full of power and elegance. Carefully sizing up the royal sapphire dragon, List silently praised it. Until the royal sapphire dragon could no longer tolerate it and let out a provocative roar. He then gestured for the gray-mouthed iron dragon, to turn his body and expose himself to the royal sapphire dragon's field of vision. He said in a clear voice, "Royal sapphire dragon, I don't know if you understand the human language and if you can understand what I'm saying. If you can understand, please give me a response." Roar. The response was given. But this did not mean that the royal sapphire dragon understood the human language. Instead, it was conveying a message: if they did not leave, it would launch an attack. List smiled and said, "Don't be so rude, royal sapphire dragon. I came to meet you with sincerity. It is fate that has guided us to meet here. You are a dragon, and I am a dragon knight. You and I are destined to have an inseparable dragon rider fate." Unfortunately, this line was fed to the dogs. The royal sapphire dragon did not seem to have any contact with humans and did not understand the human language at all. When it saw that List and Aun had not left, it flew into a rage and flapped its wings fiercely. Then, gray wind blades flew out from between its wings and blasted towards List and the dragon. It actually knows magic? List was shocked. He had never seen a dragon release magic. For dragons, they did not need to rely on the power of magic. They themselves represented the pinnacle of power, their bodies and dragon breath were the most common way of fighting. Aun twisted his body and somersaulted to avoid the bombardment of the wind blades. List took the opportunity to take out the 5-meter-long Thunder Fury dragon spear. At the same time, he cast magic eyes to carefully observe the magic released by the royal sapphire dragon. In his special field of vision, the wind blades that were constantly bombarding him showed the unique luster of high magic. It's not magic. It's condensed from high magic. It still belongs to the category of dragon magic. He quickly determined that the royal sapphire dragon could not release magic. Magic was made up of magic that formed runes and then formed a powerful sequence of attacks. The magic condensed into wind blades in front of him was similar to the fire rain that the fire dragon Leo created when he appeared. There was no sequence of rune combinations. Fortunately, it's not magic. It belongs to the acceptable range. Just as he was concentrating on his analysis, the royal sapphire dragon saw that although the greymouth iron dragon dodged its attack, it was still flying around it with its pair of dragon eyes. Its anger surged again. Its crystal-like wings flapped fiercely and lifted itself up. Then, it twisted its wings and spewed dragon magic again. At this moment, the sky suddenly changed color, as if dark clouds were pressing down. Pieces of hail condensed in the air. Like a bullet exploding, it hit the greymouth iron dragon. Every hail cut through the air with a sharp, ear-piercing sonic boom. Hailstones and sonic booms were everywhere. This is not magic. It's more terrifying than the high magic, super magic released by a chi alone. It's almost at the level of the supreme magic, super magic released by her riding a unicorn. List was shocked. After the shock, he was quickly pleasantly surprised. The stronger the royal sapphire dragon was, the happier he was because it was his dragon. "On, let's break it." One man and one dragon rushed to the royal sapphire dragon against the crazy hail. The invisible and intangible dragon magic mixed with the dragon fighting energy wrapped around to form a protective film, resisting the magic hail attack that was more violent than magic. As a perfect stage Greymouth Iron Dragon Knight. List's combat power at the moment was definitely at the top of the Dragon Knight. With the combination of strength and skills, the combat power that the Dragon Knight could show was not something that a single dragon could do. Boom! The hail hit the protective film woven by magic and fighting energy and quickly melted and vaporized. Only a small amount of it could penetrate the protective film and hit the dragon scales. But the penetrated hail was already an arrow at the end of its flight, and it was no different from scratching an itch. One man and one dragon quickly penetrated the flashy magic hail attack. Seeing that it was about to collide with the royal sapphire dragon, this beautiful dark blue sapphire dragon did not panic in its beautiful dragon eyes. It just continued to flap its wings at a normal rhythm, then rolled up more hail to launch an attack. But the next moment, List suddenly realized that the hail that should have been melted and vaporized by the protective film seemed to have solidified dozens of times at once. Not only did it not melt, but it was like a real bullet, constantly tearing at the protective film. Then with a strong impact, it hit the Greymouth Iron Dragon. It left a deep impact mark on the dragon scales. Roar! On felt the pain. List, who was connected by the mind and soul as one, also felt the pain. But his brain was exceptionally clear, and in a quarter of a breath of thought, he analyzed the reason for the sudden increase in attack. This is the special nature of the Royal Sapphire Dragon's magic. The gemstones it produces can strengthen magic, and naturally, it can strengthen itself. The strengthened magic attack directly made the condensed hail harder than rock and even comparable to the hardness of steel. Hitting the Greymouth Iron Dragon was no different from a machine gun baptism. It hurts. It is indeed powerful, worthy of being known as the magic metal dragon of the gem dragons. Unfortunately, a dragon without a knight, no matter how gorgeous its attack moves are, they are just flashy without substance. He endured the pain caused by the constant bombardment of hail and shouted loudly, "Royal Sapphire Dragon, become my dragon, you and I will be one, and then you can burst out with your true talent and combat power." 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.